Chapter 33:14. Because of this seemingly laughing yet not laughing, yet ridiculing voice, Zhu Wu Xian steadied his state of mind as he regained his usual coldness. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at you, the castle lord of Death God Castle, heartless, destitute and heartless, actually learnt to deceive yourself and others. The black-robed mysterious man hit the nail on the head as he ridiculed impolitely. Zhu Wu Xian's expression sunk as his icy cold eyes burst with murderous intent. Castle Lord Chu, do you think those excuses of yours are able to deceive your own heart? The black-robed mysterious man wasn't afraid of Zhu Wu Xian's murderous intent as he asked with a smile. Zhu Wu Xian's expression congealed as the radiance in his cold eyes slowly dimmed. The black-robed mysterious man laughed lightly. The laughter seemed to be filled with ridicule and ridicule. It made Zhu Wu Xian's heart inexplicably shrouded with a layer of restless and chaotic emotions. That restlessness made his emotions faintly emit a sliver of impatient anger. Just at this moment, the black-robed mysterious man suddenly appeared in front of him. Both hands were placed on his shoulders. Under the black robe, that pair of sinister eyes made one feel as though they had fallen into an icehouse. Their four eyes met. Immediately following that, the black-robed mysterious man's bewitching voice rang. Castle Lord Chu, have you heard of possession? Possession? Zhu Wu Xian's expressionless face had some changes. His icy cold and dim eyes were gradually covered with a layer of thin ice. You should have sensed it yourself. The black-robed mysterious man laughed softly. The person whom you want wholeheartedly has long changed her soul. Zhu Wuxin's pupils constricted slightly. The black-robed mysterious man had been observing Zhu Wu Xian's changes. Following that, according to the changes in Zhu Wu Xian's expression, he used a different tone as he continued bewitchingly. The soul in that body is not the person who had once pledged eternal love with you. The soul in that body now is the person who had seized the real Yiqing Luo's body. She is your enemy. As the black-robed mysterious man's voice and tone gradually became heavier, the changes in Zhu Wu Xian's pupils became more and more obvious. His emotions also fluctuated intensely because of the black-robed mysterious man's words. Fort Master Chu, what you need to do is to see our cooperation through to the end. Only by ascending to the peak that we want to reach. Then you will be able to summon back the real Yiqing Luo's soul, and let the real Yiqing Luo return to your side. After saying the last word, the mysterious black-robed man gently patted Zhu Wuxin's shoulder. Zhu Wuxin shuddered. That pair of emotionless eyes faintly revealed a trace of deep darkness. From the perspective of the mysterious black-robed man, I can see it clearly. As his bewitchment deepened, the black smoke slowly seeping out of Zhu Wuxin's head became more and more obvious. The mysterious black-robed man's thin and cold lips gently curled up. His sinister and treacherous eyes were filled with a complacent smile. End of recollection. Indeed, it was just as Zhu Wuxin had thought. The pills which Yiqing Luo refined were all top-grade pills. After taking it, the effects were quickly seen. The pain in his injured internal organs also gradually subsided. His breathing had also become much smoother. He opened his eyes and his vision unknowingly shifted onto Yiqing Luo. Looking at the young lady with her eyes shut, with a serious and strict expression. In his mind, the black-robed mysterious man's words surfaced once again. Is he going to take over my body? The soul in this body had already changed into another soul? It was the current soul. Had it seized the Yiqing Luo which belonged to him? Chapter 33:15. But why? When he saw the young lady in front of him, that throbbing in his heart instead, compared to when he was young, when he first met Yiqing Luo, it was even more passionate? Oh! This thought flashed past his mind. Zhu Wu Xian only felt a sudden swelling pain in his head, as though his entire head was about to explode. That labor pain. Even he who was long used to any kind of pain couldn't help but groaned. The pain was so distraught that he didn't have any other thoughts to think about his feelings towards Yiqing Luo. At this moment, the young lady who had her eyes shut tightly and was concentrating on her advancement, suddenly shuddered. A strong profound ray was released from her body. Bam! Yiqing Luo heard a muffled sound exploding in her mind. The profound energy in her profound jade heart shook. She suddenly opened her eyes. The profound ray released from her body became brighter and brighter as it spread in all directions. Roar, roar, roar. In the forbidden grounds, numerous demonic beasts howled towards the sky. The profound ray, after the radiance, slowly returned to calmness. Bit by bit, with an extremely slow speed, it started to retract. At the same time, no matter if it was the demonic beasts, sacred beasts or Zhu Wu Xian by the side, they could all clearly feel. The young lady's imposing manner was rising bit by bit, following the profound ray gathering on her body, when she was completely enveloped within. Bam! In the air, another burst of spirit wave vibrations was heard. Advanced, sky profound 4th grade. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly, as the chi waves from her body shook. She had succeeded, successfully leapfrogging to sky profound 4th grade. One must know that after sky profound realm, every grade was as difficult as ascending to heaven. She had successfully leapfrogged 3 grade. If this news were to spread, the entire Nirvana realm would probably be in an uproar. Yiqing Luo could feel it. This time, her advancement felt different from the past. After the advancement was successful, her sensing towards the surrounding chi waves, and the heaven and earth's spiritual chi, was much more obvious than before. Moreover, her control towards her profound jade heart had also increased by a lot. Ha ha! Ha ha! Lass, I knew you could do it. In the azure dew bracelet, Old Man Tsang's excited laughter was heard. Good lass, I'm so happy. Ha! Old Tsang. Hearing the familiar laughter, Yiqing Luo's smile became more radiant. I'm very happy to be able to advance, but what makes me even happier is… Old Man Tsang, you're back. Old Man Tsang's laughter slightly paused. Soon after, he continued with a smile. This old man is still counting on you to reconstruct this old man's body. Unless you don't want this old man anymore, this old man will always follow you. Yiqing Luo also smiled, but her eyes were slightly red. I won't abandon you, never again. Old Man Tsang's laughter gradually became somewhat choked with emotion. This is something to be happy about. Why did you make the atmosphere so emotional? Qi Yan shouted discontentedly. Ugly woman, you can successfully promote, at least you did not lose this holy beast's face, it is worthy of praise. Chi pounced forward and hugged Yiqing Luo's face with its little paws in pet form. Master is the best. The addition of the 2 battle pets eased the tension. Yiqing Luo touched the 2 little companions' heads and immediately carried Chi as she walked towards Zhu Wu Xian. Are you all right? Zhu Wuxin was still staring at her in a daze. His usually cold and aloof eyes were a little empty. Until Yiqing Luo's finger waved in front of Zhu Wu Xian's eyes. Chapter 33:16. In his hand, her skin was soft and fragrant. The familiar fragrance made Zhu Wu Xian relax his strength immediately. But the hand which was holding her wrist didn't loosen up. Yiqing Luo shrank back. Zhu Wu Xian tightened his grip slightly as his cold eyes met hers. I don't understand your medicine. I've only taken 1 pill in this bottle and it still hurt. Help me take a look. Calm tone, calm expression. But why did the words he said sound like acting coquettishly? Yiqing Luo took a look at the bottle which Zhu Wu Xian's other hand was holding. That was a pain-killing pill. Although it had some effect on treating internal injuries, but the main effect was to stop the pain. Yiqing Luo took a look at the scattered medicine bottles by his leg. Let go of me first, I'll apply the medicine for you. Let go, I'll hurt. Zhu Wu Xian said without any change in expression. Yiqing Luo. He had already taken the pain-killing pill. What was there to hurt? Using this as an excuse, wasn't he afraid that his aloof male god image would collapse? Recalling the time in South Tide Continent, Zhu Wu Xin used his own face to invade his arm as an excuse. All kinds of acting coquettishly. All right, his persona had long since collapsed. But now it felt that it had collapsed even more. Previously, even if Zhu Wu Xin said sweet words and did romantic things, that still retained his cold and aloof nobility. But for some reason now, she felt that Zhu Wu Xin had become more gentle. As though he had suddenly thought through something and was ready to go all out. Go all out? This feeling made Yiqing Luo feel uneasy when she faced Zhu Wu Xin. Gratitude was gratitude, but she didn't love Zhu Wu Xin. Nor could she give Zhu Wu Xin any hope. Facing such a Zhu Wu Xin, as compared to the past, the pressure was even greater. She exerted force and retracted her hand. The expression on her face was very indifferent and serious. Zhu Wu Xin, I can't be bothered to repeat the unnecessary words since you won't listen to it. She stood up and stared at Zhu Wu Xin's pale and stern face. If you're willing to treat your injuries, I'll do it for you now. If not, we'll leave the forbidden grounds now. Zhu Wu Xin raised his head slightly as his icy cold eyes gazed deeply at her face. While listening to her mouth, saying those serious and earnest words, the light in his cold eyes dimmed little by little. In the end, his eyes were like stagnant water. Yiqing Luo's heart jolted. Zhu Wuxin's current appearance could indeed make one feel a sense of guilt in one's heart. It was as if it was because of her words. Zhu Wuxin lost all his life force. That's right, it was vitality. It was as if all the auras in the area had suddenly gone dark and faded away. This feeling made Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. She shouldn't waver, no matter how much guilt and gratitude he felt towards Zhu Wuxin, because this man was too stubborn. His obsession was already deeply rooted in his bones. No matter how much she refused, Zhu Wuxin probably wouldn't listen at all. I don't love him. No matter how much concern and obedient. To him, they were all cruel. She could only use her own actions to show her attitude. Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, turned around and said to the few battle pets, "Go pick the gold magnetic spirit grass first." The few battle pets raised their tails and blinked their eyes as they looked behind Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo spoke calmly. If he's not willing to cooperate with the treatment of his internal injury, then don't bother about him. Saying that, she had already walked towards the direction of the gold magnetic spirit grass. The few battle pets looked at each other in dismay for a moment. Chapter 33:17. And, just as the other battle pets were chasing after Yiqing Luo, Zhu Wu Xin's vision had been congealing on Yiqing Luo, as his dull pupils shook slightly in his eye sockets. A wisp of black smoke. From his head, it slowly dispersed. The hands hanging by the side of his body slowly clenched. The green dragon, who vaguely sensed something amiss, raised its whiskers as it suddenly looked towards Zhu Wu Xin. Coincidentally, it heard Zhu Wu Xin's cold voice rang. "I'll cooperate with the treatment." The green dragon narrowed its eyes. Could it be that it had sensed wrongly earlier? Plop! Suddenly, a soft sound was heard from the side. The green dragon lowered its head and saw beside its huge dragon body a small lump of black little thing with its 4 limbs facing the sky, lying by its side. The green dragon lowered its eyes. The little black ball fluttered its 4 limbs, trying to get up from the ground. But the more anxious it was, the more it could only flop on the ground. That little black ball was so small, just like a small mole on the huge green dragon's body. The green dragon's flame was completely retracted. The dragon body swiftly turned into an ordinary size. It lowered its dragon head and used its whiskers to gently touch the little black ball. Its noble and dignified self was now emitting a loving feeling. And it was because of this episode The green dragon didn't delve into the strange aura which it sensed from Zhu Wu Xian earlier. Yiqing Luo heard Zhu Wu Xian's words. Her footsteps halted as she turned around and walked back to Zhu Wu Xian's side without saying a word, as she half squatted down. Her hand was just about to stretch out towards the 10 over-medicinal bottles on the ground. Her wrist was once again held by Zhu Wu Xian. Yiqing Luo's expression sunk. Zhu Wu Xian. Zhu Wu Xian only held her wrist, as he slowly pushed her hand away and let go of her hand. These medicinal pills, since you've already thrown them to me, then they belong to me. A deep and cold magnetic voice floated down from the top of her head. Yiqing Luo. If he wanted the medicinal pills which she had refined, just say so directly. Using such an awkward method, didn't he find it childish? Yiqing Luo only assumed that Zhu Wu Xian had taken a fancy to the high-quality medicinal pills which she had refined and wanted to keep it for future use. After all, in the Nirvana realm, the value of the pill was immeasurable. Some people were even willing to give up their entire family fortune in order to obtain a single pill. So, Yiqing Luo couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. Zhu Wuxin wanted the pill. Yiqing Luo felt that it wasn't bad to use medicinal pills to repay Zhu Wu Xian's kindness. Therefore, he took out some internal injury healing elixirs from the profound phoenix ring and began to treat Zhu Wuxin. This time, Zhu Wuxin was very quiet. Even Yiqing Luo had touched his wound. His expression didn't change at all. Even his eyelashes did not tremble. He just quietly stared at the scattered medicine bottles at his feet. No one knew what he was thinking. After a moment of silence, there were many small wounds on Zhu Wuxin's body. For some injuries, even if painkillers were swallowed, they would still hurt when the medicine was applied. But Yiqing Luo didn't even hear the change in Zhu Wu Xian's breathing. This man, don't tell me they're like the undead puppets and have no senses? Yiqing Luo was bandaging his wound as she raised her eyes. The man's cold face was reflected in her eyes from a close distance. He was indeed handsome like a jade. His entire face seemed as though it was carved out of a beautiful jade. Adding on to that pair of cold eyes which seemed to see through all the coldness and warmth of the world. That imposing manner which was isolated from the world was unattainable. It could be said. Chapter 33:18. Such a good-looking man. Why couldn't he get over it, to insist on being obsessed with her? To tell the truth, as long as he slightly retracted that icy cold aura. What warmth did he not have? Perhaps it was because Yiqing Luo's gaze was too scorching. The man raised his head and his icy cold eyes coincidentally met with her charming eyes. His thin lips moved slightly as his cold voice carried a tinge of iciness. Why? Finally realized that this face of mine is more attractive than him? Yiqing Luo, who was caught sneaking a peek, didn't dare to show any expression. Instead, she openly stared at him directly. The man's lips curled as the exquisite cold lines on his face became gentler. If you want to look, I can let you look for a lifetime. Yiqing Luo. This fellow, when did he learn the tactic of seducing a man? Yiqing Luo increased the strength in her hand as she pressed on his wound. This face of yours is indeed good-looking, but I still prefer my Xian's face more. A man who didn't show any signs of change when she applied medicine or when she pressed on his wound. After she finished saying this sentence, all the muscles on his body suddenly tightened. The pressure on his body at this instance sank. Yiqing Luo was very close and could feel it very clearly. But she didn't mind it and pretended that she didn't notice it. Unknowingly displaying their affection, this was also the way to make Zhu Wu Xian give up. She continued to apply medicine. He remained silent. The atmosphere became even more treacherous than before. The other few companions had long shrunk to one side, avoiding this kind of atmosphere. Yiqing Luo increased her speed. Very quickly, she tied the last piece of bandage. Following that, she took half a step back. If you have any questions to ask me, just ask. Chu Wu Xian was the first to break the silence. As long as it's something you ask, I will answer it. Yi Qing Luo. He thought that she kept staring at him because she was hesitating if she should carry out a series of questions and answers? Although, when she saw Zhu Wu Xian appearing in the Forbidden Grounds, she indeed had questions to ask. Later on, she heard the conversation between him and Feng Ling. The questions she wanted to ask were even more. But she wanted to ask didn't mean that she would really ask. If Zhu Wu Xian wasn't willing to say, she wouldn't ask either. Just now, she was merely staring at him. Everyone had their own secrets. A person like Chu Wuxin, like Dmo Xian, they were both mysterious and powerful existences. It was inevitable for him to have secret. But she looked into Zhu Wuxin's emotionless eyes. Yi Qing Luo's mind suddenly recalled what Zhu Wu Xian said at that time. Now, no matter what changes happen, I will always protect you. This is something that will never change. Then, there was the sound of wind chimes. Didn't you already know everything? Why did you still save her? These two sentences made Yi Qing Luo swallow the words that were at the tip of her tongue. In the end, she still asked, "You are working with the Palace of Gloomy Shadows, right?" The answer was very obvious. Zhu Wuxin nodded. "Yes." "You appearing here, is it arranged by the Nether Palace?" Yi Qing Luo asked again. "No." Zhu Wuxin looked at her firmly. "I came here because of you." "Me?" Yi Qing Luo was disrupted by his words, as the firm guess in her heart was disrupted. Chapter 33:19. "So, you heard that the Palace of Umbra is going to attack me in the forbidden area of the East Continent, so you rushed over?" Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly as she continued, "This piece of forbidden grounds, because of the sealing of the Azure Dragon's energy. It's impossible for humans to get close to this place. Since you're not relying on the Palace of Gloom to stand here safe and sound, then why are you alright?" This question caused Zhu Wuxin to be slightly stunned. The calmness on his face also disappeared. He frowned slightly. "You don't believe me? I believe that you won't hurt me." Yi Qing Luo replied without any hesitation. Her voice was resolute and straightforward, "But I don't believe the secluded palace." "You don't want me to cooperate with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, right?" Zhu Wuxin lowered his eyes, his gaze a little gloomy. He brought up the topic of his identity. Yi Qing Luo knew that he didn't want to say it. She didn't pursue the matter. Instead, he followed Zhu Wuxin's words and replied, "I hope that it won't affect your cooperation with the Palace of Darkness." Before he could finish, Zhu Wuxin hurriedly interrupted her. "As long as you do not wish for it, I will not cooperate." His tone was still cold and indifferent. However, his eagerness and the emotions overflowing from his eyes were filled with hope. It was as if he was waiting for her to take the initiative to speak. Yi Qing Luo looked at him fixedly. Their eyes met for a moment. She stood up. Her beautiful face was emotionless. "Zhu Wuxin, we are not on the same path. You are working with the Palace of Gloomy Shadows because you need to make use of them. As for me, I am destined to be the enemy of the Palace of Darkness. Even though we don't have any conflicts of interest now, we will still become enemies in the end." Her eyes were calm. Just like that, he looked down on Zhu Wuxin. "Chu Wu Xian, no matter how firm your feelings for me are, what's more important is your own goal. Just like me, even if I feel guilty and grateful to you, I won't coexist peacefully with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness because of this. Just like the Gloomy Palace, even though we're working together, they won't give up just because of your feelings for me." Her words were very realistic. It was also a fact, because the two of them did not choose the same path. No matter how much Zhu Wuxin felt that he wouldn't hurt her and could even go against the Palace of Darkness to protect her. The premise of all this was that he would not hurt her and protect her, and it would not affect his own interests. Just like what happened in the forbidden area of the East Wave continent this time. It was obvious that the Palace of Gloomy Darkness wanted the Azure Dragon. This was not difficult to guess. After all, when the vermilion bird was about to awaken, the dark forces had spent a lot of manpower and resources to obtain the vermilion bird. He had almost taken control of vermilion bird. Now, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and half of the black tortoise's soul were in her hands. Be it because the azure dragon was the head of the 4 great divine beasts, it was the strongest. By contracting the azure dragon, the gloomy palace's strength would increase greatly. Or was it to prevent Yi Qing Luo from gathering the 4 sacred beasts? The darkness palace would definitely be eyeing azure dragon. But now the azure dragon still fell into her hands. The interests of the palace of gloomy darkness were severely damaged. However, to Zhu Wuxin, there were no benefits involved. That was why he could appear in the forbidden area and scrupulously and stand in front of her to protect her. Their positions were different. Their way of living was different. She had no rights to persuade Zhu Wuxin not to work together with the palace of gloomy darkness. Chapter 33:20. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Xian's expression turned increasingly complicated and gloomy. His icy cold eyes shone with a chilly glint which made one's heart tremble. Yi Qing Luo noticed the coldness emitting from Zhu Wu Xian. She didn't bother about it. She just bent down and stretched out her hand to help him up. Following that, she beckoned Qi over and turned it into an ordinary tiger beast as she helped Zhu Wu Xian up. Yi Qing Luo said, "Let's leave the forbidden grounds first." Zhu Wu Xian stared at her back view as he pursed his lips into a straight line. Yi Qing Luo's words made him want to retort, but he didn't know how to. Indeed, their standpoints were different. The path they chose was different. The way they lived was also different. He was able to disrupt the Nether Palace for Yi Qing Luo because of her plans and missions. Just because of the Nether Palace, it was impossible to cancel the collaboration with him. Yes, it was impossible for him not to cooperate with the Nether Palace. But, if Yi Qing Luo asked him personally, he would indeed agree. But, he would still use another method to make use of the Nether Palace's power to achieve his goal. The destination was different. The journey was different. Yi Qing Luo might not be considered as white. But she was definitely not black. And he was completely black. His life was completely black. His future was also completely black. Zhu Wu Xian shut his eyes forcefully as he allowed Yi Qing Luo to help him onto Qi-Qi's back. Qi-Qi followed behind Yi Qing Luo. The tiger beast's feet stepped on the ground as it rubbed against the leaves. It blended with the sound of the young lady's light footsteps. Vaguely, Zhu Wu Xian could smell the young lady's fragrance following the breeze. She was following beside him. Suddenly, he was thinking, if it was the previous Yi Qing Luo, that completely white, kind and innocent Yi Qing Luo, if she followed beside him, could she dye her completely black? In this way, when he fell into the abyss, his heart would no longer be empty. With the azure dragon present, all the demonic beasts in the forbidden grounds had submitted. There was no need for Yi Qing Luo to say anything. Those 3-eyed heavenly beasts obediently brought Yi Qing Luo to the place where the gold magnetic grass was planted. Because the forbidden grounds was shrouded with the azure dragon's special presence all year round. The metal magnet spirit grass grew extremely well. It was full of spiritual energy. Yi Qing Luo wasn't courteous at all as she waved her hand and swept away all the gold magnetic spirit grass. "Little girl, please." Azure Dragon looked at the young girl who was slowly arranging the magnetic gold spirit grass, and suddenly spoke. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes and looked at Azure Dragon. This form of address. It gave Yi Qing Luo a feeling that she had instantly turned into a little Lolita. After all, Qi called her master. Although Qi Yan is arrogant and pampered, from time to time calling her stupid human, ugly woman and so on, it is obvious that he still regards her as his master. The Azure Dragon and the two of them were all sacred beasts. It was the feeling of being called a little girl by the Azure Dragon. Moreover, the Azure Dragon's tone and gaze, it really looked like a senior looking at a junior. The disheveled Yi Qing Luo coughed dryly. His gaze suddenly landed on Shiju, who was rolling and playing on the azure dragon. She seemed to have thought of something, and her heart calmed down. The expression on her face also became calm again. You seem to be in a hurry to leave this place. Is there something urgent? The azure dragon did not seem to notice the change in her emotions and asked directly. Chapter 33:21. Lover. Azure Dragon, who was caught off guard and stuffed with a mouthful of dog food, flashed past his eyes as a trace of longing flashed past his eyes. He glanced sideways as his peripheral vision shot a glance at Shiju, who was hugging his dragon scale and playing with it happily. His eyes were filled with gentleness. If it's possible, can you stay here for another night? Can't bear to leave this place? Yi Qing Luo smiled as she asked. Azure Dragon shook his head. For Shiju. Shiju? Yi Qing Luo didn't understand. Azure Dragon's whiskers rose slightly as his gaze towards Shiju became more and more tender. I believe you should have guessed. My relationship with Shiju. No need to guess, it's very obvious. Yi Qing Luo nodded. You contracted with me because of Shiju, right? Half and half. Azure Dragon gave a profound smile. From that pair of huge dragon eyes, Yi Qing Luo couldn't tell what the dragon was thinking. She retracted her gaze and looked toward Shiju. That's right. Azure Dragon was Shiju's father. A leopard beast and a dragon. Gave birth to a leopard beast. No. It couldn't be said to be a leopard beast. After all, on Shiju's head there were already 2 horns which looked like dragon horns. Although, as compared to the horns on Azure Dragon's head, it was much uglier. But after all, it was still 2 dragon horns. The child left behind by a dragon and a leopard. It was no wonder that back in the magic beast forest, even though Shiju's mother was the queen of that forest, Shiju was still ostracized by the other mirage beasts. Just because Shiju's body wasn't pure leopard beast blood. If those mirage beasts knew. In Shiju's body, not only was there leopard beast blood, there was also dragon clan blood. Those mirage beasts, would they crazily lick Shiju? After all, dragon was the most noble beast in the beast clan. Cough, cough, cough. She had one more question. Her little Shiju, was it a dragon or a leopard? Last Luo, can I invite you? Seeing Yi Qing Luo not speaking for a long time, Azure Dragon opened his mouth to ask again. Yi Qing Luo regained her senses. What do you want to do for Shiju? I don't know how long I've been sealed here for, but this place is filled with my presence. The Azure Dragon used its tail to gently roll up Shiju's small body. Sending Shiju into Yi Qing Luo's arms, he continued, Shiju's body has my dragon clan's blood, and after it stepped into this forbidden grounds which sealed me, it activated the dragon clan's blood in its body. It glanced at the 2 black hard objects protruding from Shiju's head. As a result, Shiju grew dragon horns even before it was promoted to a mid-high rank mirage beast. This was indeed a dragon's horn. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and carefully touched the hard object on Shiju's head. When this thing came out, Shiju almost smashed his own head. Through Azure Dragon's care, Shiju's head wound had long recovered. When Yi Qing Luo touched it, her strength was very light, with a hint of probing. He was afraid of hurting Shiju. However, Shiju didn't feel any pain. Instead, his eyes curved as he smiled. Your meaning is to make use of the sacred beast's presence which you left behind in the Forbidden Zone, to allow Shiju to advance and grow? Yi Qing Luo instantly understood the meaning behind Azure Dragon's words. Right. Azure Dragon's eyes gradually surfaced a sliver of solemnity. But Shiju is after all still young. If it advances in this way, it might be dangerous. Moreover, we can only assist and help. The rest will depend on Shiju itself. Chapter 33:22. Although Shiju was still a cub, but after all, it had its own consciousness. This kind of choice was naturally left to it to decide. If it wanted to maintain its current state, progressing step by step, she would also agree to it. Shiju raised its little head as its dark brown eyes sparkled with sparkling radiance, giving out a low sound. Its head rubbed against Yi Qing Luo's palm. This was Shiju's answer. Yi Qing Luo and Shiju signed the contract. Naturally, it could understand Shiju's words. As for the others, they were all little war pets, so naturally they could understand beast language. Shiju said, "I want to become stronger." Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly as her 5 fingers rubbed its little head. "Why does Shiju want to become stronger?" Shiju gave a low growl. Shiju replied, "Because, Mother said, as long as I become strong enough, Mother will meet me." Following that, it gave a low growl. "Moreover, I want to be like the other companions, to be able to protect Master, protect everyone." Yi Qing Luo cupped its little head as she gently planted a kiss on its forehead. "Since you've decided, then listen to your father's words. I will accompany you by the side." Shiju nodded its head vigorously. It wanted to stay by its master's side. He had to make himself stronger. It couldn't miss any chance to become stronger. The place which Azure Dragon chose was the cave which it was sealed in, because here its remnant presence was the thickest. Moreover, it was the safest. Under Azure Dragon's help, Shiju had already started its dragon race's advancement ritual. Yi Qing Luo sat by the side waiting. Unknowingly, more than half of the time had passed. The sky started to darken. A few little war pets had already nestled by Yi Qing Luo's side, surrounding her in the middle as they fell asleep. Yi Qing Luo rubbed the side to keep her warm, while Chi-Chi who had covered her with its furry tail. Her peripheral vision coincidentally saw Zhu Wu Xian who was resting with his eyes closed. Even if he was resting with his eyes closed, his entire body was emitting a chilly aura. This man, just like his name, as though like a heartless person. But when facing her, his gentleness and change, she could feel it. From Zhu Wu Xian's change, to those words which he said previously. There was also wind chimes. Zhu Wu Xian should already be very clear. The Yi Qing Luo, who had once given him his first warmth, no longer existed. She was not the person he was looking for. But why, he has no intention of giving up. "Lass, don't tell me, you want to fall in love with someone else?" Old Man Tsang's mocking voice suddenly rang in his mind. Hearing Old Man Tsang's voice, Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes trembled. Then, he pressed his hand on his wrist and closed his eyes. His divine sense entered the azure dew bracelet. She didn't notice. In the instant that her divine sense entered the azure dew bracelet, the man who was resting with his eyes closed slowly opened his ice-cold eyes. His vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. In this dark cave, the dim light in his eyes flickered, but it was not real. Within the azure dew bracelet, Yi Qing Luo's divine sense had just appeared in the azure dew bracelet when it pounced towards Old Man Tsang's direction. "Old Man Tsang, I miss you so much." Yi Qing Luo hugged Old Man Tsang's spiritual body. Although she couldn't feel his temperature, but to be able to see him appearing in the azure dew bracelet, she felt satisfied. Chapter 33-23. In front of her elders, Yi Qing Luo rarely revealed a little girl's coquettish pout. She stuck out her tongue and smiled at the old man. "I was wrong, I won't do it again," she was smiling. Her voice was full of laughter. Her eyes were a little red. It wasn't hard to hear. Her tone was serious as the oath. "If it happens again, even if the great Luo immortal comes, I'm afraid I won't be able to stay by your side anymore." Old Man Tsang smiled lightly, raised his hand and placed it on Yi Qing Luo's head. But, this time, it can be considered as a blessing in disguise. Yi Qing Luo was still muttering "blessing in disguise," these 4 words. Suddenly, she felt a warm and comforting palm covering her head. The temperature of that palm made Yi Qing Luo startled. Immediately she raised her head and looked at Old Man Tsang with joy. "Old Man Tsang, you temperature?" She could feel the temperature from Old Man Tsang's body. And she could clearly feel the strength of Old Man Tsang's palm. This was a real body. You didn't sense wrongly, now I can already transform into a real body. Old Man Tsang embraced her delicate body and pulled her into his embrace. It wasn't like before when she threw herself at Old Man Tsang, that kind of air, without any substance. But it was real, being embraced by Old Man Tsang into his not considered thick but extremely safe embrace. She could even smell the pure and clean aura on Old Man Tsang's body that was like pure white snow. In this period of time, because of the evolution of the Azure Dew Bracelet, I've sunk into a deep slumber. Old Man Tsang smiled and stroked her head. Originally, I still had to sleep for a period of time, but it just so happened that because you and the Azure Dragon signed a contract, the Azure Dragon's dragon breath and formidable strength woke me up. Yi Qing Luo pulled away from Old Man Tsang and circled around him several times. Now you really have a real body. It was no longer a spiritual form. It was no longer a feeling of wanting to touch, but the feeling of touching air. It was a real body. A real body that could be touched. Yi Qing Luo held Old Man Tsang's hand and was excited for a while. After she calmed down, she pulled Old Man Tsang and sat on a stone bench at the side. What the hell is going on? What Azure Dew Bracelet evolving? Also, why are you asleep? Artifact spirits were similar to Battle Pet. They were all leveling up by sleeping. She had always believed that Old Man Tsang had disappeared into the Azure Dew Bracelet. Unexpectedly, Old Man Tsang had always been in a state of deep sleep during this period of time. Generally speaking, as the artifact spirit of the Azure Dew Bracelet, there was a precondition for it to fall into a deep sleep. Last time, it was because she had passed the 3rd floor of the Purgatory Tower. This time, why did Old Man Tsang fall into a deep sleep? I'm not too sure about the specifics either. Old Man Tsang cupped his chin and recalled what had happened before Chern fell asleep. At that time, you wanted to forcefully undo the contract with the Azure Dew Bracelet. I naturally couldn't allow you to act so recklessly. However, just as this old man was about to stop you, I suddenly felt an extremely powerful force. That power was very warm, and it was so strong that it could directly suppress the power of you forcefully breaking the contract and resisting me. At that time, this old man seemed to have heard someone say something in my ear. After that, when this old man opened my eyes, it was the time when you contracted the Azure Dragon. Powerful force? Chapter 33-24. And what did that person say to Old Man Tsang? Who could that person be? The person who appeared at that time and prevented her from breaking the contract with the Azure Dew Bracelet. Which also meant that that person knew that she had the Azure Dew Bracelet. Why would he help her? But, from Old Man Tsang's description, and the fact that Old Man Tsang had returned to her side and condensed a physical body. For that mysterious person. She was still grateful. Luckily there was that mysterious person. She did stupid things that didn't succeed. Old Man Tsang still stayed by her side. No matter what that mysterious person's purpose was. She was very grateful to that mysterious person. If there's a chance, I must thank that mysterious person in person for letting you come back. Yi Qing Luo raised a big smile, and once again stretched out her hands and hugged Old Man Tsang. She truly felt the warmth of Old Man Tsang. It made her feel like she was dreaming. There will be a chance. At that time, although my consciousness was already very fuzzy, but I can be sure that that mysterious person must be waiting for you. Old Man Tsang chuckled as he caressed Yi Qing Luo's head. She nested in the Azure Dew Bracelet for a while, until Old Man Tsang sensed that someone was calling her from the outside. She then left the Azure Dew Bracelet. Yi Qing Luo's mood was very happy. Not only did Old Man Tsang return to her side, he could also condense a physical body. And he could also walk out of the Azure Dew Bracelet with a physical body. Only, it was still the same as before when he was a spirit body. He couldn't leave her within 100 steps. However, he could appear in a physical body. This was already a huge improvement. In the future, when she became stronger, She would definitely be able to reconstruct old man Tsang's physical body. When Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, she met with several furry little faces in front of her. There was even a faint smile at the corner of her mouth because of the joy. After seeing the few little friends in front of her, Yiqing Luo hugged Chi-Chi's little head. "What's wrong? Ugly woman, are you a pig? Sleeping so dead, no matter how I call you, you won't wake up," Qi Yan ridiculed. Yiqing Luo's other hand hooked Qi Yan's long neck and pressed its small body into her arms. Then, she gently looked at Chi-Chi. "Did I sleep for a long time? What time is it?" "It's the time." Chi-Chi obediently rubbed against Yiqing Luo's palm. "If you continue to sleep, Master and that damn fatty's bet will be lost." Yiqing Luo immediately stood up. She had actually stayed in the Azure Dew bracelet for quite a few hours. She pressed her aching brows and glanced sideways at Shiju's direction. However, there was nothing there. Even the Azure Dragon was nowhere to be seen. Yiqing Luo was stunned. "Where's Shiju and Azure Dragon?" "Shiju it." Chi-Chi licked her lips hesitantly. "Qinglong it." This hemming and hawing look made Yiqing Luo's joyful mood suddenly sunk. "What's the matter? What happened to Shiju and Qinglong?" "Master, don't be anxious, Shiju is fine." Chi-Chi heard the urgency in Yiqing Luo's tone and hurriedly pacified her. "But how should I put it? Perhaps Shiju is the offspring of a leopard-type mirage beast and the sacred beast Azure Dragon. It's a little special." "What kind of special method?" After being comforted by Chi-Chi, Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as her curiosity was piqued. Chapter 33-25. Yiqing Luo raised her hand as she calmly pressed Qi Yan's head into her arms. After that, she looked smilingly at Chi-Chi. "Where are Shiju and Azure Dragon?" "Qi Yan." Motherf *Ker, was this sacred beast being despised? Was this ugly woman targeting this sacred beast? Yiqing Luo ignored the rage in Qi Yan's heart as she followed behind Chi-Chi as they walked out of the cave. When she passed by Zhu Wu Xian, her footsteps paused slightly as she glanced sideways at him. Her vision swiftly swept past his face. His complexion was no longer as pale as yesterday. His thin lips also had some color of blood. It showed that the injuries in his body should have almost recovered. She was assured, "You rest here for a while, I'll go take a look at Shiju and we'll leave this place later." "Leave this place?" Zhu Wu Xian muttered these 4 words as his lowered eyelids flashed past a chilly intent. Yiqing Luo didn't hear his murmur clearly as her slender brows rose slightly as she gave out a puzzled syllable. He suddenly raised his head. That pair of deep and cold eyes stared straight into hers. His eyes overflowed with seriousness, making her unable to shift her gaze away momentarily. His cold thin lips moved slightly. "He's waiting for you outside?" That he was referring to Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo was stunned as her gaze turned serious and firm as she nodded. "Yes." Zhu Wu Xian's thin lips pursed tightly. His vision was still fixed on her. After a long time, his eyes drooped as his head also lowered. Between the two of them, there was silence. Especially that man with his head drooped, as though he was shrouded in a haze. That feeling made Yiqing Luo frown tightly. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she didn't know what to say. The more she said, it would only give Zhu Wu Xian some hope. In the end, she shut her mouth as she walked past him step by step. Her footsteps had no hesitation or pause. Because of that, she didn't discover it. Just as she walked to the entrance of the cave, that man with his head drooped down slowly turned his head sideways. A pair of cold eyes stared at the back of the departing figure. His gaze, suddenly bright and suddenly dark, extremely treacherous. After walking out of the cave, the fresh scent of the forest greeted them. Yiqing Luo shook off the thoughts of Zhu Wu Xian's earlier look from her mind. Since there was no way to give Chu Wuxin any emotional response, Chu Wuxin had no other choice. He had to widen the distance between them, just as he was about to catch up with Chi-Chi and look for Shiju. Suddenly, the sky darkened. An enormous creature suddenly dashed in front of Yi Qing Luo. That huge dragon head looked at Yi Qing Luo anxiously. Last Qing Luo, are you alright? Yi Qing Luo was stunned. I'm fine, what's the matter? The azure dragon moved closer to the dragon's head, and looked at her body for a while. After confirming that she was indeed fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that you're fine. Just now, I sensed an extremely strong dark energy here. I thought that it was the group of puppets from yesterday. Powerful darkness? She was here just now. Why didn't she feel anything? Now, she was a profounder at the 4th rank of the Sky Profounder realm. His perception should have improved. Master! Suddenly, a black shadow leaped down from the azure dragon's body. That voice was on par with Chi-Chi's voice. Chi-Chi's voice was hovering between a Lolita and a Shota, whereas Shiju's voice was a pure Shota. It was so adorable that Yi Qing Luo's face turned red. Chapter 33-26. Qi Yan took the opportunity to get out of her grip, fluttered his wings and quickly escaped from Yi Qing Luo. Shiju, you can speak now. Yi Qing Luo was about to gently stroke Shiju's furry little head. But when he looked down, he saw the little thing in his arms. Yi Qing Luo was dumbfounded once again. In his bosom was a little black ball. It was indeed a little black ball. However, when he held it in his arms, the furry sensation had already turned into incomparably hard scales. That's right, scales. Can you imagine a leopard with the appearance of a small leopard but covered in dragon scales? Not only that, those 2 dragon horns on Shiju's head also revealed the embryonic form of dragon horns, although it was still a pitch-black mass. But at least it had a shape. Yi Qing Luo finally understood. Why was Chi-Chi so hesitant when she mentioned Shiju? After all, it was her little battle pet. Chi-Chi was still very clear about it. She preferred cute, furry little things. It wasn't that Shiju wasn't cute now. Instead, this appearance was really a little strange. Mistress! Shiju tilted its head and its bright brown eyes were filled with grievance as it looked at Yi Qing Luo's startled expression. Mistress doesn't like me anymore? Yi Qing Luo hugged it tightly. Cough. How could I not like Shiju? I'm just a little shocked. Shiju's eyes suddenly lit up, rubbing her little head against Yi Qing Luo's bosom. I knew Master wouldn't hate me. Big Brother Scarlet Flame only knows how to scare me. Saying that, it raised its head and stared at Yi Qing Luo seriously. Master, I'm only in the evolution stage now. When I'm through the evolution phase, I'll return to my furry self. Yi Qing Luo tapped its little forehead. No matter what Shiju turns into, I like it. However, she raised her eyes and looked at the azure dragon with some astonishment. Because of the difference in race, the way Shiju evolves is also different? Generally speaking, like Chi-Chi and Qi Yan. If they wanted to evolve, they would do so in a deep sleep. Why was it Shiju's turn? It was just that its outer appearance had the symbol of the dragon clan. The azure dragon looked at Shiju lovingly. It should be because the dragon race is different from the leopard race. That loving look made Yi Qing Luo unable to bear it as she hugged Shiju in her arms. He could tell. Azure Dragon truly loved his son. Suddenly, she thought of something. Are you going to the magical beast forest to look for Shiju's mother? The emotions in Azure Dragon's eyes fluctuated greatly. But soon, everything returned to normal. Its dragon whiskers drooped, and the light in the depths of its eyes dimmed a little. For now I won't go, but… Yi Qing Luo didn't know much about the past between the green dragon and the mother beast, so she wasn't in a good position to make any suggestions. Alright, as long as you think it through. The azure dragon raised his head and looked towards the sky. He laughed softly. He handed Shiju to you, hoping that you can help Shiju become stronger. This is his hope, so… I will accompany Shiju and you, waiting for the day she appears on her own accord. Interracial love. The hardships and feelings involved. Yi Qing Luo couldn't empathize with it. Her lips curled upwards slightly as she nodded her head vigorously. Yes, no matter if it's she Ju or you will not let it down. The agreed time with Hao Nanren was approaching. Yi Qing Luo asked the war pets to prepare and returned to the cave, intending to ask Chu Wuxin to leave together. But after entering the cave, Chapter 33:27, Zhu Wuxin was not inside. Even the place he was sitting on was flat, as if no one had ever sat there before. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly. Was Chu Wuxin going to disappear again? Was it the same as the inn on the South Wave continent? Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo's mind surfaced the scene of Zhu Wu Xian raising his cold eyes to look at her. He asked, "Is he waiting for you outside?" She answered, "Yes." At that time, his eyes lost all light. It was because of this sentence. Was that why he chose to leave alone? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips tightly as she turned around and replied indifferently, "Since he has left first, let's go too." If Chu Wuxin couldn't get rid of his obsession with her, between them, this was indeed the only way. Leaving alone was the best choice. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to leave, Azure Dragon suddenly opened his mouth. "Last Qing Luo, wait." Yi Qing Luo's footsteps halted. Azure Dragon's eyes darkened and he asked solemnly, "How did he leave?" "This. I don't know." Yi Qing Luo shook her head. "Before I walked out of the cave, he was still there. Just now we were outside the cave the entire time, but we did not sense his aura when he left." The Azure Dragon's tone became heavy. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. Indeed, they were at the entrance of this cave just now. Nor did he leave. She did not see Zhu Wuxin come out. But now, Zhu Wuxin wasn't here. How on earth did he leave? Or perhaps just how powerful was he? Even the Azure Dragon could not sense his aura? All right, since he has already left, there's no point in delving into this matter. Seeing Yi Qing Luo keeping silent, Azure Dragon sighed. "You should rejoice that you and him are not enemies, otherwise it would be difficult to deal with him." Yi Qing Luo's vision shot towards the direction where Zhu Wu Xian was sitting earlier. That was right, if it was an enemy. Chu Wuxin was definitely even more difficult to deal with than the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. Should she rejoice that Zhu Wuxin was obsessed with her? Actually, her selfish hope. Being able to get along with Zhu Wuxin was like getting along with Long Yunzhan, Qiao Jin, and the other brothers. However, he could only think about it. Just like that, a man and a group of beasts arrived at the entrance of the forbidden area. Yi Qing Luo was just about to keep the little companions into the pet space. Suddenly, the lush grass in the surroundings swayed. Following that, many normal-sized three-eyed heavenly beasts emerged from the ground. The one in the lead was none other than Jiao Tutu's heaven-reaching beast. Little by little, more than 50 of them surrounded him from all directions. Yi Qing Luo frowned and stood in front of her companions. "What do you want to do?" These three-eyed heaven-reaching beasts prostrated themselves on the ground in fear when the Azure Dragon appeared yesterday. Then, he tucked his tail between his legs and left dejectedly. Now, he actually came to look for trouble again? Were they not afraid of Azure Dragon? Roar! Jiao Tutu's Tongtian beast took a step forward and growled at her. "Human, we're not here to cause trouble. We just want to thank you and beg you to forgive us for our reckless actions yesterday." Did he come to express his gratitude and apologize? Chapter 33:28. If it wasn't for the contract between you and Lord Azure Dragon, I'm afraid we would still be controlled by that bunch of people. So it's necessary to thank them. Jiao Tutu's heavenly beast lowered its head slowly and its front limbs also prostrated. It made the most respectful gesture. After that, it continued, "What questions do you want to ask? As long as I know, I will definitely answer." Those ferocious three-eyed heavenly beasts yesterday. At this moment, all of them were extremely obedient. Yi Qing Luo smiled and asked, "Why did you help that bunch of monsters? And when did they come into this forbidden area? Answer me in detail. If we don't help them, all the demonic beasts in this area will be annihilated." The heavenly beast's eyes were filled with anger, As the boss of this area, I will absolutely not allow any human or any other species to bully the demonic beasts. How cruel were the methods of the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo was very clear about it. To be able to make the arrogant three-eyed heavenly beast, the strongest among the demonic beasts, so resentful and unreconciled, it must be some underhanded means that forced the three-eyed heavenly beast to provide help. As for when they came here, the heavenly beast thought for a moment. We are demonic beasts. Those beasts in the outside world cannot tolerate our existence. Of course, we don't have a good impression of those beasts and don't want to interact with them, so this area belongs to us demonic beasts. And because of Lord Azure Dragon's suppression, humans can't step into this area, but just 3 days ago, a group of monsters who claimed to be from the Palace of Darkness broke in. Their bodies were filled with the aura of the dead and their bodies were rotting. No matter how we attacked, those monsters could get up again. After they found the place where Lord Azure Dragon was sleeping, the 6 people you saw yesterday followed them here. After saying those words, the heaven-reaching beast added, "It is clear that their target is Lord Azure Dragon. Based on their conversation, it seems that they have a way to contract Lord Azure Dragon. Merely, the prerequisite for that is to prevent you from contacting Lord Azure Dragon." She was also aware of this point. Just like before, the heavenly beast was eager to chase her out of the forbidden area. And without hesitation, it told her the location of the metal magnet spirit grass. It only hoped that she would leave quickly. Why, from the very beginning, the Palace of Darkness was so sure that if Azure Dragon met her, he would definitely form a contract with her. Could it be that the secluded Darkness Palace had long seen through Shiju's identity? Or the Abyss Palace believed that as long as it was one of the 4 sacred beasts, they would form a contract with her unconditionally? After all, she already had 2 holy beasts and a half-soul holy beast by her side. Also, contract a sacred beast, especially a sacred beast like the Azure Dragon. If it was not voluntary, wasn't it as difficult as ascending to the heavens to form a contract? What method did the Palace of Gloomy Darkness have to be so sure that they could contract the Azure Dragon? They didn't say the specific reason, so we don't know either. Jiao Tutu's Tong Tian beast saw that Yiqing Luo didn't speak for a long time and took the initiative to speak. Yiqing Luo's vision fell back onto it. "All right, I can feel your sincerity, go back." She smiled and waved at them. However, the 50-odd piercing beasts still stood their ground, showing no signs of moving aside. Chapter 33-29. In order to express my thanks, I've selected 30 of the strongest heaven-reaching beasts among our heaven-reaching beasts as my thanks gift. Jiao Tutu's beast had just finished its sentence. The heaven-reaching beasts that were surrounding them moved to the front and formed a line in unison. I have this confidence that the strength of our heavenly beasts is much stronger than those so-called high-level mirage beasts outside. Jiao Tutu's sky-reaching beast looked at the 30 sky-reaching beasts that had stepped forward with pride in its eyes. Yiqing Luo. Giving away brothers without a word? 33-eyed heavenly beasts? Just like that? Chi-Chi said. Master, quickly agree. 3-eyed heavenly beasts are the most powerful beasts among the demonic beasts. It's not a bad choice to let a group of demonic beasts be our servant. Qi Yen agreed. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and looked at the beast. You really want to give these 30 beasts to me? Jiao Tutu's beast nodded. I have considered it for a long time. This is the result of careful consideration. Of course, I am not giving them to you purely to repay your kindness. Most of the reason is to thank Lord Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon who was named looked up at them. Jiao Tutu's heaven-reaching beast's eyes immediately lit up with excitement. While Lord Azure Dragon was asleep, he used his own power to protect this area. It's also because of Lord Azure Dragon's protection that our 3-eyed heaven-reaching beast race has been able to flourish until now. The heavenly beast's attitude was very firm. Yiqing Luo had no intention to decline. Most of the brothers in Devil class did not have their own battle pit. If they could let the heavenly beasts contract with them or become their battle partners, it was a good choice. She pondered for a moment and said, I can accept these 30 heavenly beasts, but I do not intend to keep them by my side. Jiao Tutu's heavenly beast was stunned, a trace of hesitation flashed in its eyes. Yiqing Luo did not intend to hide her decision from the heavenly beast and continued, I will arrange for them to be my brother's battle pets. Of course, I can promise you that these heavenly beasts will choose their own masters and they can choose to contract or be companions by their side. When Jiao Tutu's heaven-reaching beast heard these words, the expression in its eyes relaxed a little. As long as they want to return here, they can. Yiqing Luo smiled as she looked around at the 30 heavenly beasts. If you agree, I will take you in. The heaven-reaching beast hesitated for a moment. In the end, he raised his head and looked at her with determination. I believe in Lord Azure Dragon's choice. I believe in you. Outside the forbidden area, the current scene wasn't the same as the previous day, where the people of the various factions were gathered together. The faces of the dozens of people who stayed behind were pale and filled with anxiety and fear. At the very front of the entrance of the forbidden area, Hao Nanren couldn't hide the pride on his face. Yiqing Luo had only set a time limit of 48 hours. Now 40 hours had passed. Just another 8 hours, whether it was Yiqing Luo or the royal family's power, they would all belong to his Jade Dome sect. However, he seemed to be the only one with a smile on his face. Suddenly, the sound of someone kneeling on the ground could be heard. Overlord, Overlord, miss, you will be fine, I beg you. I beg you to help the East Continent first, help the East Continent. The dozens of people who stayed behind looked over. Chapter 33:30. These 10 over people who stayed behind were the representatives of various powerhouses who stayed behind. The other powerhouses' cultivators had all rushed back to their own powerhouses, because, just yesterday afternoon, a mysterious powerhouse attacked the East Continent. Previously, they had only heard of monsters that were invulnerable and impervious to fire and water, but now they had appeared on the Eastern Continent. They then realized, why did the South Continent fall in such a short period of time, almost being annihilated? Secluded Palace's attack was swift and sudden. Most of the powerhouse's cultivators were still gathered at the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds. Towards this sudden attack, they had yet to react in time. East Continent had already been invaded by more than half of their territories. East Continent Monarch was already mentally prepared. But he had not expected that Secluded Palace would choose this timing to attack the East Continent. He immediately stabilized the cultivators' emotions as he arranged for them to fight against the Secluded Palace in an orderly manner. At least till Yiqing Luo came out of the Forbidden Grounds. Most of the cultivators had some suspicions towards Yiqing Luo, placing all their hopes on a 15-year-old young lady. This was something which they could not accept. But, now that things had come to this, they had no other choice. No matter if it was to hold on till Yiqing Luo came out of the Forbidden Grounds, or for their own territories, they had to rush up and fight against that bunch of monsters. Outside the Forbidden Grounds, every powerhouse's cultivators left 1 or 2 people behind to watch over the Forbidden Grounds while the rest returned to their own forces to fight. Secluded Palace's attack was extremely overbearing, as though they wanted to occupy the East Continent in the shortest amount of time possible. East Continent Monarch guessed. Possibly, Secluded Palace's people wanted to take advantage of Yiqing Luo's absence to occupy the East Continent. So that was why they were so overbearing. But East Continent Monarch's guess was nonsense to Hao Nanren. As one of the 4 major sects, the sect master of Jade Dome sect who was stationed in the East Continent, Hao Nanren had no intention to help Secluded Palace's attack at all. The entire Jade Dome sect was indifferent, as though they were hanging on high, whereas Hao Nanren was calculating the time in his heart. As long as it was more than 48 hours, he would be able to openly let the Death Warriors seal the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds. Even if Yi Qing Luo was still alive, he also wanted her to die in there. As for the East Wave Sovereign and the profound practitioners of the other forces, they had repeatedly persuaded him to arrange for people to stand guard here. As the sect master of the Jade Dome sect, he had no choice but to come out and fight. But how Nanren's arrogant attitude! He wanted all the people from the major forces to completely give up on him. It was a matter of life and death, and it was also a matter of the survival of the continent. How Nanren's actions made most people in the East Wave continent completely disappointed in the Jade Dome sect. Especially, it was at this moment. The East Wave monarch knelt down in the direction of Dmo Xian and said those words. This caused the profound practitioners that had stayed behind to be extremely shocked. Dizun? It was a masked man dressed in purple. Was it Dizun? Had they heard wrongly, or had the East Wave Sovereign spoken wrongly? However, a glimmer of hope gradually rose in their hearts. If the man in front of him was really the legendary Dizun, the East Wave continent would be saved. However, such a hope had yet to take shape in the hearts of the crowd. The elegant man slowly turned to look at the East Wave Sovereign, who was kneeling on the ground. He was clearly wearing a mask, but everyone could clearly feel it. Chapter 33-31. At this moment, everyone suddenly realized. This man's aura was actually so strong. Just before this, they only felt that this man was noble and elegant, with an extraordinary status. But now, when the man's aura was fully unleashed, from head to toe, that overbearing, powerful, dignified and noble aura was like a scorching sun. It made one unable to shift their gaze away, but unable to look straight at his nobility. The Overlord. If this man was the Overlord, they absolutely had no doubt. They were saved. They were saved. Everyone's heart surged with a huge sense of joy. As long as the Overlord took action, there was nothing to fear about the secluded palace. I am here to accompany my wife. The man's cold voice was calm and serene. It was just a simple sentence. It made the surrounding people's backs soaked in cold sweat. Following that, the surrounding cultivators who stayed behind suddenly reacted to a very important matter. Earlier, the lady who entered the Forbidden Grounds was the Overlord's wife. The Overlord and the West Continent's original Three Springs sect's young matriarch, Yi family's seventh Missy, were together. Basically, the entire Nirvana realm had heard about it. That meant the lady who was addressed as Imperial Madam by the East Continent monarch. The lady who walked into the Forbidden Grounds and whose life and death was unknown. Was that legendary figure Ye's seventh Missy? No wonder. They felt that. Yi Qing Luo's name was extremely familiar. The cultivators who stayed behind started to feel apprehensive. Yi Qing Luo was the Imperial Madam, the Overlord's wife. The Overlord's wife had entered the Forbidden Grounds. There was no way anyone could walk out of that place alive. If the Imperial Madam really couldn't walk out, if the Overlord was infuriated, no one dared to think about it. All of them shifted their vengeful gazes onto Hao Nanren. If it wasn't for the Jade Sky sect master, they would have targeted the Imperial Madam. The Overlord had already helped the East Continent to deal with the secluded palace. The East Continent wouldn't be like this, losing a third of their territory. Now, even the remaining territory was about to be forcefully invaded by the secluded palace. Moreover, Hao Nanren wasn't surprised at all, and looked extremely pleased with himself. It was obvious that he had long known about the Overlord and Yi Qing Luo's real identity. At the thought of this, everyone's resentment toward Hao Nanren grew. It was obvious that Hao Nanren was using the public to deal with Lady D. As the sect leader of the Jade Dome sect in the East Continent, he should settle the conflict between him and the Lady Emperor himself. He had used the innocent onlookers to create momentum for himself and target the Imperial Madam. If he did this, the Overlord might let him off for the sake of his status as the sect leader. However, did Hao Nanren not care? Would they offend the Overlord because of this? Lord Overlord, Imperial Madam agreed to come to East Water Continent. Doesn't that mean she agreed to help East Water Continent? Lord Overlord, for Imperial Madam's sake, I beg you, please help. The East Wave Sovereign kowtowed heavily. When the Palace of Netherworld was attacking the East Continent in a threatening manner, as the East Wave Sovereign, he was unable to rush to the front lines and stop the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, because he was the monarch of the East Wave Continent. More importantly, only Yi Qing Luo could save the East Continent. Chapter 33-32. However, whenever the news of cities being invaded came, the East Wave monarch couldn't sit still anymore. He was a smart man. He could tell how much the Overlord doted on the Emperor Lady. Therefore, the East Wave monarch wouldn't use any righteousness to persuade the Overlord. Instead, he used the Emperor Lady. As expected, after hearing about the Emperor Lady, the Overlord slightly raised his eyes under the mask. That cold and sharp gaze was like a sharp blade that pierced straight into his heart. The East Wave monarch felt a chill down his spine and cold sweat rolled down his forehead. It's because little Luo wants to play that I didn't destroy the East Wave continent. Diamo Xian pursed his thin lips. His voice was so cold that it made one's hair stand on end. The fear in the East Wave monarch's heart rose to the peak. The other cultivators hated Hao Nanren even more. Overlord, the one who has been targeting the Emperor Lady and instigated her to enter the forbidden area, is the sect master of the Jade Dome sect. We will hand the sect master of the Jade Dome sect to the Overlord and let him do whatever he wants. The East Wave continent will not complain. We only hope that the Overlord can save us. Yes, yes, yes. It's the sect master of the Jade Dome sect's fault. He forced the Emperor Lady to enter the forbidden area. We will throw the sect master of the Jade Dome sect into the forbidden area and let him find the Emperor Lady. As the Profounders spoke, they swarmed towards Hao Nanren's direction. Hao Nanren's behavior had completely annoyed the people of the East Wave continent. The Overlord's name was right there. They would rather offend Hao Nanren. They didn't want to offend the Overlord. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you touch me? Hao Nanren didn't expect that the group of cultivators would suddenly attack him. Hao Nanren scolded them with a red face. However, he was directly flipped over by a group of people and pressed onto the ground. No matter how Hao Nanren yelled, those cultivators refused to let go. Hao Nanren was the sect master of the Jade Dome sect. His profound grade was extremely high and he wasn't weak. But after all, he couldn't fight against all sides. Especially, he didn't believe that this group of cultivators from small forces would dare to make a move against him. The entire area outside the forbidden area was in a hubbub and chaos. At this moment, suddenly there was a loud explosion. Following this, countless bird-type demonic beasts flapped their wings and dyed the sky pitch black. The smell of blood and slaughter began to spread. A terrifyingly powerful dark force emanated from the surroundings. This caused everyone in the surroundings to stop what they were doing and look towards the horizon in shock. The East Wave Sovereign's face turned pale. Not good. The people from the Palace of Gloom are here. Dark Nether Palace? The profound practitioners who stayed behind cried out in shock. Why did the people from Dark Nether Palace attack here? Could it be that they have already occupied Jade Dome City? That's not right. The East Wave Sovereign's expression was solemn as his gaze swept towards the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds. Their goal is to seal the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds and prevent the Imperial Madam from leaving. The profound practitioners panicked. How did they know that the Imperial Madam was in the forbidden area? Is there a spy? Ah! Suddenly, a scream rang out from the crowd. A profound practitioner was sent flying. Following this, a giant bird beast swooped down from the sky and grabbed onto the profound practitioner's shoulder, lifting him into the air. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Countless birds and beasts rushed towards the profound practitioner. Chapter 33:33. It floated down from the sky, only the torn pieces of the profound practitioner's clothes remained. All the profounders exclaimed in surprise, and their gazes were filled with astonishment as they looked at the birds and beasts that filled the sky. This group of birds and beasts were so ferocious. They were so fast that they couldn't even react. Screech after tasting the human blood, the birds and beasts cried out in excitement. Huge birds and beasts were circling in the sky. The sharp eyes of the beast seemed as if it was staring at its prey as it stared fiercely at the profounders below. Someone is coming. The cultivators were in this strange atmosphere. A group of people walked in from the outside of the faintly discernible enchantment. There were about 30 people in that group. The person walking at the front was a woman in a black robe with an exquisite figure. The woman slowly walked to the entrance of the forbidden area and fixed her gaze in the direction of the entrance. "Is it here?" The woman's voice was seductive. A burly and expressionless man behind her nodded. The woman waved her hand. "Go, set up the array formation and seal the entrance. The rest of you, kill everyone here." The woman's arrogant words. It stunned everyone present. They looked at the clothes of the woman and the 30 people behind her. They were from the Palace of Darkness. Who was this woman? She wanted to kill all of them with just 30 people? Were the people from the Palace of Darkness so arrogant? However, there was no time for everyone to be shocked. As the woman gave the order, the people behind her moved quickly. The birds and beasts in the sky also swooped down. The expressions of the cultivators changed drastically and they panicked. They started to deal with the people from the Palace of Darkness who had suddenly barged into the forbidden area. They couldn't care less about how Nanren who had fallen to the ground. These 30 people were not humans at all. They were corpse puppets. The 60 or so people who stayed behind to guard the place were all profound practitioners who couldn't be considered to be very strong. They had no chance of winning against these corpse puppets. In addition, there were 2 new corpse puppets. They rushed towards the entrance of the forbidden area and started to set up the array formation in an orderly manner. For a moment, the back mountain of the Jade Dome sect was filled with blood. Blood-curdling screams rose and fell. Looking at the 2 majestic undead corpse puppets fiddling with the array formation, the East Wave Sovereign's face turned pale with fright. He immediately looked at Dmo Xian, who had unknowingly hidden in the dark. The secluded Darkness Palace obviously intended to stop Yiqing Luo from walking out of the forbidden grounds. What's wrong with His Majesty? Isn't he going to make a move? Instead, he allowed the monster from the Palace of Darkness to set up a formation at the entrance? The East Wave Sovereign could not understand this at all. What on earth was the Overlord thinking? Hearing the miserable screams in his ears, as well as the screams of countless profound practitioners, telling him to quickly flee, he felt a chill run down his spine. The East Wave Sovereign's body was trembling. His hands, which were hanging by his side, suddenly clenched. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with determination. He strode towards the direction where Dmo Xian was hiding. He took a step forward. Suddenly, an oppressive force attacked him from behind. His wrist was tightly gripped by an extremely strong hand. Immediately after, an ice-cold sensation pressed against his neck. "Don't even think about asking the Overlord for help." How Nanren's cold voice was heard beside his ear. The East Wave Sovereign was stunned as his body stiffened. "What are you doing?" Chapter 33-34. Are you crazy? The East Wave Sovereign's pupils contracted as he roared in disbelief. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness wants to trap the Empress in the Forbidden Grounds because they are afraid that she will affect their plans to invade the East Wave continent. If we really let the Dark Nether Palace form the formation, the entire East continent will be destroyed. How Nanren grinned maliciously as he tightened his grip on his struggling body. This sect master doesn't believe that without her, the East continent will be destroyed. This sect leader is the sect leader of one of the 4 great sects. Can't you deal with the Palace of Darkness? Generally speaking. Yiqing Luo walked into the forbidden grounds. Most likely, he had died inside. He told the people of the Dark Abyss Palace to set up a formation to seal the entrance of the Forbidden Land. It was safer. How Nanren naturally wouldn't stop them. Looking at the two men, they quickly set up the array formation. It was obvious that the formation was extremely complicated. In his heart, he was faintly hoping that Yiqing Luo had not died in the Forbidden Grounds. He did not die, but he could not walk out of the Forbidden Land. It felt like he was trapped in the Forbidden Land until he died. This was true despair. The East Wave Sovereign's face was extremely pale. The sharp blade on his neck had already cut through his skin. The stinging sensation caused him to scrunch up his face. The East Wave Sovereign glanced at the elegant and noble figure in the darkness from the corner of his eye. The blood-curdling screams became increasingly shrill in his ears. There were fewer and fewer profound practitioners from the forces who were still alive. No. He couldn't let the headmaster of Abyss Palace continue like this. No matter what the Overlord was thinking. He couldn't wait any longer. As long as the Palace of Gloomy Darkness knew that Di Zun was here, he would definitely not dare to act rashly. I advise you to behave yourself and not play any tricks. How Nanren threatened the East Wave Sovereign, as if he had sensed that something was wrong with the East Wave Sovereign's aura. The East Billow Monarch's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand and grabbed How Nanren's arm. Then, he opened his mouth and shouted towards the direction of the darkness. Emperor. One word came out of his mouth. There was a sharp pain in his wrist. How Nanren grabbed the East Wave Sovereign's arm. Then, he melted the dagger in his hand. Your back. Suddenly, the concealed DMO Xian slowly opened his mouth. His voice was very soft, very low. If not for the fact that How Nanren and the East Wave Sovereign were so close to each other, she probably couldn't even hear the 3 words that floated out of his mouth. And it was precisely because of these 3 words of DMO Xian. How Nanren's hand that was holding the dagger froze. Not good. The female leader of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness suddenly looked at the entrance of the Forbidden Grounds in fear. She strode toward the 2 undead puppets. Quick! We have to be fast, however, before the woman could finish her words. Her coquettish and charming face instantly turned ashen. Bang! In the air, the sound of explosions was deafening. The surrounding air seemed to be squeezing a huge amount of energy. The astral wind suddenly rose and enveloped the entire back mountain. Everyone could feel it clearly. The ground beneath his feet trembled and slowly cracked. The gigantic birds and beasts that filled the sky suddenly let out fierce roars. Another wave of rapid flapping of wings could be heard. Tight and tight. Swish, swish, swish. The birds and beasts seemed to have lost all their vitality and fell from the sky. The dark sky that was covered by the birds and beasts once again regained its original brightness. What's going on? How did these birds and beasts die? All dead, all the birds and beasts died just like that? Chapter 33-35. They were not the only ones who were shocked. The people from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were also stunned by this scene. They knew the power of the birds better than anyone else, but now they didn't even see who did it. Hundreds of birds and beasts died just like that. The woman's face darkened. She frowned and stared at the sky. But at this moment, the sky was once again shrouded in darkness. What's going on? Are the birds here again? The profound practitioners looked around in panic. But the woman's face was not one of joy at the arrival of reinforcements. Instead, it was one of paleness and gloom. That majestic power was getting closer and closer. Fierce astral winds constantly collided with the surrounding air. The huge dark force was monstrous. Roar, roar, roar. Suddenly, the deafening roar of beasts rose and fell. Everyone saw rows of neatly organized shadows rapidly approaching from the horizon. Looking at the silhouette, looking at the size, it should be a beast that moved on 4 legs. But why would a beast that moved on 4 legs appear in the sky? The orderly rows of shadows covered the sky. Suddenly, a green light appeared. The flickering azure light lit up the dark sky with sparkling light. After that, a deafening dragon roar reverberated throughout the back mountain. Roar, roar, roar! The beasts growled in unison to show their respect. Then, a green dragon gathered and circled the sky. Pieces of green dragon's scales glowed brightly, full of power. A powerful pressure pressed down on him. Dragon, that's a dragon! The woman looked at the green dragon circling the sky in shock. She could not hide the shock on her face. The two new undead corpse puppets were so intimidated by this majestic aura that they stood rooted to the spot, staring at the sky without blinking. The profound practitioners who were still alive, as well as Hao Nanren and the East Wave Sovereign, were shocked by the scene in the sky. They could not believe what they were seeing. Were they dreaming? Dragon, it's really a dragon. The dagger in Hao Nanren's hand slipped. He stood up slowly and looked at the giant dragon in the sky. The supreme dragon. Why would it appear here? The last time a dragon appeared in the Nirvana realm, it was in the West Continent that the seventh miss of the night had demonstrated it once. After that, they never saw the dragon summoned by the seventh miss of the night again. Wait a minute. Yi seventh miss equals Yi Qing Luo equals Imperial Madam? Madam D had a dragon. Could this enormous azure dragon be Lady D's dragon? No, that's not right. They had heard of Madame D's dragon. It was a blue dragon whose entire body was azure blue, although they had never seen it with their own eyes. However, that was the first time a dragon had appeared in the Nirvana realm. It had long been spread throughout the entire Nirvana realm, no matter how big or small. Lady D's dragon was undoubtedly a blue dragon. Then, this azure dragon, why did it appear here? The huge azure dragon rapidly approached. Only then did everyone realize. There was a vague figure standing on the head of the azure dragon. Amidst the wild gales, that figure's robes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. One of the corpse puppets looked at the dazed woman and said, "We're too late." Too late? What does that mean? The woman knew this very well, but she was unwilling to accept it just like that. Just at the next moment, that huge dragon's head pressed towards the woman. The dragon's roar soared into the sky, shaking the entire mountain. Chapter 33-36. Following the dragon's breath, it sprayed downwards. It brought about a huge sense of oppression. That voice made the East Wave monarch and the surviving cultivators present revealed a joyous expression. As for Hao Nanren and those people from the dark forces, their faces turned pale instantly. The lady's petite body swayed uncontrollably as her legs suddenly went soft as she fell onto the ground. This was fear from the bottom of her heart. When the green dragon approached and lowered its head, everyone could clearly see that blazing figure on the dragon's head. It's Madame D. Madame D really came out. Madame D is actually sitting on the dragon. Don't tell me this dragon is Madame D's war pet? The cultivators exclaimed in shock as they discussed fervently. His eyes were filled to the brim with this huge dragon. The young lady's lips curled into a sweet smile. She slowly stood up. Even though the green dragon had lowered its body low enough. But to humans, this was equivalent to the height of a 3-story building. Yiqing Luo opened her arms. Her red sleeves fluttered along with the strong wind, like a butterfly's wings spreading out. Her lips curled upwards, her ravishing face was like a stream of gold, peerlessly beautiful. Ah Xian, I'm back. She laughed lightly, her voice was filled with joy. Finishing her words, she leaped. There was no presence of profound energy on her body. Just like that, he allowed himself to fall down as light as a feather. Swoosh, a light breeze blew past. Her body fell into an embrace. The elegant sandalwood scent seeped into her nostrils. Her delicate body, which had been chilled by the astral wind, was blown away. Yiqing Luo's arms hooked around his neck, her eyes filled with smiles, her sweet voice softly called out to her lover, Ah Xian. Done playing? Dmo Xian's eyes drooped. His deep peach blossom eyes seemed to be plated with light, as he gazed deeply at the young lady's face. Yiqing Luo buried her head into his chest, rubbing against it. The game is still going on, how can it be enough? She raised her head again, smiling at Dmo Xian. Ah, Xian's body is a little cold. Did he wait for me for an entire night? She knew. After she entered the forbidden grounds, Dmo Xian would absolutely not leave this place. He would be at the entrance, waiting for her. The man looked at the girl in his arms and smiled sweetly. Suddenly, he bent down and gave her a hard peck on her lip. Yiqing Luo hugged his neck tightly as she giggled. Since Ah Xian is so cooperative, I will reluctantly agree to let you play with me. She purposely dragged out the last word. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a sly arc. She glanced behind her, in the direction of Fox Saint Technique and the other undead puppets. Fox Saint Fa's face turned pale, and his legs turned to jelly as he fell to the ground. He stared at the two people who were hugging each other in shock. You actually really, and Dizun. How could, her fear? It was not just because of the Azure Dragon, and the appearance of Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo came out alive from the forbidden grounds and even contracted. The Azure Dragon which the Palace Lord wanted. Fox Saint Fa already knew about this news last night. But he didn't expect Yiqing Luo could really control the head of the four sacred beasts, the Azure Dragon sacred beast. Furthermore, she brought the Azure Dragon out of the forbidden grounds. This was totally different from what the Palace Lord had guessed. She didn't expect, after Yiqing Luo entered the forbidden grounds, Dmo Xian would still be guarding outside the forbidden grounds, which meant to say, earlier when she appeared with the undead puppet, Dmo Xian had actually been watching by the side. He didn't show his face and didn't take any action. Chapter 33-37. Fox St. Law was shocked as she turned around and stared at the two new type of corpse puppets. The Overlord is here too, why didn't you say anything? The corpse puppets looked at her calmly. You are the one who brought people to set up the array, you are the second palace master of Secluded Palace, we are only responsible for following orders. Fox St. Law's throat tightened. Her pair of pupils looked at the pair of fairy-like golden boy and jade girl in front of her in horror. Fear gnawed at her limbs and bones. I was still thinking. How to lure you out, I didn't expect. You are so impatient, taking the opportunity when I am not around to attack the East Continent. Yiqing Luo wrapped one hand around Dmo Xian's waist, smiling sweetly as she looked at Fox St. Law, the smile on her lips gradually thickening. That's just nice, then let's settle all of you in one go, and save me trouble later. While she was speaking, her fingertips had already raised the raging glower flame fan. The majestic pressure attacked downwards. Fox St. Law's expression changed again. She could obviously feel it. Since the last time she crossed hands with Yiqing Luo's ability had become stronger again. And stronger, not just by a little bit. Beads of cold sweat appeared on Fox St. Law's forehead. Because Wolf St. Law died to save her. All this was because of Yiqing Luo. She wanted to kill Yiqing Luo, to seek revenge for Wolf St. Law. She begged the palace master to get an array. She wanted to trap Yiqing Luo in the forbidden grounds, forever unable to leave the forbidden grounds. But she had neglected. This piece of forbidden grounds was originally Azure Dragon's slumber. How could the array trap Yiqing Luo, who had a contract with Azure Dragon? Fox St. Law's face was ashen. Imperial Madam! Imperial Madam! Suddenly, not far away, East Wave Monarch, who had struggled free from Hao Nanren, rushed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. East Wave Monarch's face was filled with joy and pleading. Imperial Madam, please save the East Continent. That bunch of monsters from Secluded Palace are about to invade the East Continent's territory. To East Wave Monarch, Yiqing Luo was the savior. Seeing Yiqing Luo coming out of the forbidden grounds, and in such a flashy manner, riding on a huge dragon, it was as though he had seen hope. Yiqing Luo was the hope of the East Continent. Yiqing Luo heard East Wave's monarch's voice and her vision fell onto him. I will settle it. 4 simple words. It was as though the East Wave sovereign had been injected with limitless power. He bent his waist and bowed deeply towards Yiqing Luo's direction. When he lifted his waist again, he returned to his calm and majesty as the ruler of a country. Since he chose to believe in Yiqing Luo, he would no longer hesitate. What he needed to do was to settle all the factors which would disturb Yiqing Luo. Furthermore, he would try his best to complete the conditions which he had promised Yiqing Luo previously. The East Wave sovereign decisively called out to the 20 or so cultivators who were still alive. They quickly restrained the stunned man behind him. How Nanren's behavior today! This had already caused the hearts of the profounders from the various powers to turn cold. The sect master they respected was a sect master who was willing to maintain the peace of the continent, protect their territory, and protect the people. Not because of his own selfish interests. Time and time again, he had disregarded their lives. This battle, because of Yiqing Luo's return, blew the horn. When Yiqing Luo held onto the secluded palace's second palace lord, riding on the azure dragon, and appeared on the battlefield with Dmo Xian. Chapter 33-38. East Continent's commoners and various powerhouses had treated Yiqing Luo as a deity and respected her. Because Yiqing Luo brought along the Overlord to join in, secluded Darkness Palace's aggressive attack and invasion was completely interrupted. Furthermore, they retreated step by step. The Overlord's power was needless to say. In order to let his woman enjoy herself, he basically wouldn't make a move. Although he didn't make a move, but he stood on the battlefield, his gaze was fixed on Yiqing Luo. That unique aura still gave Nether Palace a huge pressure. Looking at Yiqing Luo's side, a green dragon, a white tiger, a vermilion bird, plus 30 ferocious 3-eyed heavenly beasts which no one had ever seen before. Adding on Yiqing Luo's explosive power, it was simply a massacre in a slaughterhouse. Apparently, Yiqing Luo was going to have this battle with Nether Palace. It was treated as a testing ground for her to continuously advance 3 grades. After the profound grade advancement, the biggest training was actual combat training. Only through actual combat could she discover her own shortcomings and use the profound energy in her body flexibly. Nether Palace was like a free experience points. How could Yiqing Luo miss it so easily? And this was a slaughterhouse's action. It also made those who knew that Yiqing Luo had a secret weapon to deal with that group of impenetrable monsters from the Palace of Darkness. Various large powerhouses cultivators kept on gathering around Yiqing Luo, hoping to obtain a secret weapon to protect their own powerhouses. After 2 days of battle, Nether Palace was forced to retreat out of East Continent's territory. This result, the entire East Wave continent was overjoyed. The commoners were shouting Yiqing Luo's name and Dmo Xian's name excitedly. But Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian stood on top of the city walls, looking at the direction of Nether Palace, which was forced to retreat. But the expression on her face was still not relaxed. The reason why this battle had turned into a slaughterhouse was partly because of her advancement and the fact that she had contracted the Azure Dragon. But this battle was a little too smooth. Yiqing Luo felt flustered instead. Some were happy while others were worried. Just like this, how Nanren, who was imprisoned in the dungeon of the royal family, heard the good news from the guards. All he had was resentment and unwillingness. If it wasn't for that slut Yiqing Luo, the person who saved the East Continent and was hailed as a hero would be him, how Nanren. These honors clearly belonged to him. It was Yiqing Luo, that scoundrel who snatched away his honor. He, the sect master of the Jade Dome sect, was trapped in this dark place. How Nanren looked around with resentment in his eyes. He scoffed coldly. After he left, how proud that little slut was right now. When the time came, she would die miserably. East Wave Monarch was obviously bewitched by that slut Yiqing Luo. To imprison him here. Weren't they afraid that the citizens of the East Continent who admired the Jade Dome sect would join forces to protest? Compared to the royal family, his identity as the sect master of the Jade Dome sect was even more noble. The purpose of the Jade Dome sect's existence was to maintain the balance between the 4 continents in the Nirvana realm. If he disappeared for a few days, the elders of the Jade Dome sect would definitely sense that something was amiss. This investigation would definitely lead to the royal family. If things got out of hand, Jade Dome sect's elders appeared. He had enough confidence to make Yiqing Luo disappear from this world completely. Chapter 33-39. Suddenly, an ethereal and cold laughter sounded in Hao Nanren's mind. That laughter was full of ridicule. Hao Nanren's expression changed, and he quickly looked around. Who is it? Who is it? His movements attracted the attention of the 2 guards guarding outside. The guard walked in and looked at Hao Nanren. He shouted angrily, "If you don't want to be whipped, behave yourself." After saying that, the 2 guards stood at the bars of the dungeon and continued to chat. "Stop looking, you can't see me." The voice rang out again. Hao Nanren's pupils constricted. He looked at the 2 guards who were leaning against the bars of the dungeon and chatting. Their expressions were the same as usual. Obviously, they did not hear this sudden voice at all. Hao Nanren calmed himself down and walked to the corner of the dungeon warily. The dignified sect master of the Jade Dome sect has fallen to such a state. How pitiful! The cold voice seemed to be regretting something as it clicked its tongue and chuckled. Hao Nanren's face darkened and he asked angrily in his heart, "Who are you? What's your motive for looking for me?" The cold voice chuckled again. The illusory laughter seemed to come from all directions. "Do you think that the current you still has something that can be used by this empress?" The cold and gloomy voice mocked without holding back. Hao Nanren, who had always been conceited, could not tolerate someone looking down on him. "Since I have no value, why are you looking for me? I just feel that the sect master of the Jade Dome sect is a little ridiculous, so..." I couldn't help but laugh. The cold voice was full of sarcasm. Hao Nanren was furious and his eyes widened. "Get lost!" Ha 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 ha! Hao Nanren became more and more furious. That voice was like a demonic voice that kept ringing in Hao Nanren's mind. Bit by bit, it tortured Hao Nanren's psychological defense. Hao Nanren had a splitting headache from the laughter. He hugged his head tightly with both hands and finally gritted his teeth, as if he had surrendered. "What exactly do you want?" His submission made the cold voice very satisfied. The cold voice did not continue laughing. Instead, it chuckled and said, "The sect leader of the Jade Dome sect is still dreaming that there will be an elder of the Jade Dome sect or an elder of the sect coming to save you. I really think that you are foolish and naive." Hao Nanren's expression froze. "What do you mean?" "Your families, the next successor of the Jade Dome sect that you hid has already been brought into the palace by the East Wave Sovereign." The cold voice chuckled in a low voice. It seemed to be mocking him, but it also seemed to be pitying him. Hao Nanren's body stiffened, and his eyes widened in shock. "The next successor is here, especially when he is controlled by the East Wave Monarch. Do you think that the elders of the Jade Dome sect who have long wanted to divide your forces will miss this opportunity?" The cold voice was still explaining the current situation to him in his mind. "So, are you still hoping that the elders of the sect will find out that you've been imprisoned and rush over to save you?" When the last word was uttered, Yi Zichen's expression changed. Hao Nanren clenched his fist. No. It couldn't be like this. He had clearly hidden that brat very well. How could he be taken away by the royal family? In his heart, he kept brainwashing himself not to believe the words of this mysterious person. However, there was a voice in his mind telling him. Chapter 33-40. In the end, Hao Nanren knelt down weakly. He hugged his head and asked softly, What should I do, as the sect master of Jade Dome sect? Even if Hao Nanren was narrow-minded, he was absolutely not a fool. He naturally knew. The appearance of this sinister voice was definitely not as simple as watching him make a fool out of himself. To be able to silently appear in the dungeon under such tight supervision, and to be able to converse with him without being detected by the guards. It showed how powerful the owner of this sinister voice was. This person would find him, which meant that he still had some value. And it also meant that this person had a common enemy with him. But Hao Nanren couldn't guess. Was this person's motive the East Billows royal family or Yiqing Luo? No matter which one it was, they were all his targets for revenge. Do you want revenge? The sinister voice laughed coldly. Hao Nanren clenched his fists. Yes. Not only did he want revenge, he also wanted to protect his Jade Dome sect. Jade Dome sect could only belong to him alone. No one else could even think of touching it. Even if it was his own son, he wouldn't be able to get his hands on it. I can help you to walk out of the dungeon, but the rest will depend on what you do. The sinister voice laughed. That's right, that son of yours is hidden very well by the royal family. If you want to find him, you have to put in some effort. Hao Nanren's eyes flashed as a vicious glint flashed past his eyes. He had to find the son who had the mark of the next sect master of Jade Dome sect. Otherwise, once that child had a chance to make a comeback, he would absolutely not let him off. If it wasn't for the child who had the God Emperor mark, once he died, Jade Dome sect would be affected. Otherwise he would have strangled the child to death the moment the God Emperor mark appeared. He was the sect master of Jade Dome sect. That child had seen him kill his mother with his own eyes. That child had always hated him. He was clearer than anyone else. So he absolutely had to find that child. What do you need me to do? Hao Nanren asked gloomily. The sinister voice laughed coldly. Do you think you have any value for me to make use of? I don't believe that you will help me unconditionally. Hao Nanren squinted his eyes and said coldly. The voice laughed again. Indeed, I won't help you unconditionally, but it's also true that you don't have anything that I can use. The voice paused, and the coldness in it sent a chill down Hao Nanren's spine. However, after all, an annoying fly is also a troublesome fellow to deal with. Hao Nanren hadn't thought about the meaning of this sentence. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his head and his vision turned pitch black. After that, he lost consciousness. East Wave Continent, Jade Dome City Imperial Palace. East Wave Monarch stood respectfully behind Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian, as his face was filled with reverence. Behind him, the representatives of countless forces also stood respectfully at the side. The East Wave Monarch said happily, "It's all thanks to the help of Emperor Madam and Di Zun that the East Wave Continent is safe. On behalf of all the people of the East Wave Continent, I thank Emperor Madam and Di Zun." The row of representatives behind him respectfully knelt down and expressed their gratitude in unison. Although Yiqing Luo had a bad premonition, but looking at the people of the East Wave Continent, they were all immersed in the joy of this victory. She didn't have any concrete evidence. Chapter 3341. Based on Seclusion Palace's character. After being beaten to the point of retreating out of East Continent's borders. But there was still no movement. They must be suppressing their evil intentions, waiting for the right time to unleash it. She absolutely could not let her guard down. Yiqing Luo leaned on Dmo Xian's arm as she smiled at the crowd behind her. Monarch and I are merely making a deal. You've completed my request and I'll settle Seclusion Palace for you. There's no need to thank me. No. Imperial Madam's request is for the sake of East Continent. After East Continent Monarch found the God Emperor's imprint, the future successor of Jade Dome sect, he completely understood why Yiqing Luo would raise such a request. Even for him who was in a high position, he couldn't understand. How could Hao Nanren be so heartless to hurt his own flesh and blood, the descendant who would take over his position as Jade Dome Sect's sect master in the future. Just to protect his position as sect master? By right, shouldn't he be nurtured from a young age to protect Jade Dome Sect in future? But how Nanren trapped the boy in the secret room and restrained him with iron chains. He used various humiliating methods to drive the boy crazy. If it wasn't for the fact that the boy was quick-witted and acted dumb, enduring the humiliation, probably now he couldn't even keep his limbs and had become a cripple. Luckily, he was able to save him in time. As long as the boy recuperated properly, he would definitely regain his health in time. This boy definitely had a grudge against Jade Dome Sect and his own father. Imperial Madam asked him to bring the boy back to teach him personally. Then when the boy grew up, she would let him become Jade Dome Sect's sect master openly. She hoped that East Continent royal family and Jade Dome Sect would be on good terms. Because he had suffered too much since he was young. The boy would know how to be grateful. It's all in the past, let's not flatter each other anymore. Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. She thought for a moment and decided to remind them, Seclusion Palace has always been sinister and cunning. They have lost this battle completely and will definitely find a chance to counterattack. It's better for everyone to be more alert during this period of time. East Continent Monarch heard the deeper meaning in Yi Qing Luo's words and his expression congealed. Thank you, Imperial Madam, for your reminder. Yi Qing Luo, East Wave Monarch and various powerhouses' representatives exchanged some conventional greetings and instructed them to take note of some small matters. Just as he was speaking, Yi Qing Luo's expression changed slightly as her originally smiling long and narrow eyes suddenly squinted. Imperial Madam, what's wrong? The East Wave Sovereign was always good at reading people's expressions. He immediately asked worriedly. The East Wave continent had already regained its peace. However, the East Wave Sovereign's heart was still in a mess. Yi Qing Luo's emotions. It was highly possible that it was related to the lifeline of the East Wave continent. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes as her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring. Then, he glanced sideways. His peripheral vision collided with Dmo Xian's. Her prey had taken the bait. Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian looked at each other with a smile and immediately stood up. The two's actions stunned everyone present, including the East Wave Sovereign. The East Wave Sovereign came to his senses and stood up as well. My Lord Emperor, Madam Emperor, what's wrong? It's nothing. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes were deep, some small private matters that need to be settled. She held on to Dmo Xian's hand and under everyone's startled gazes, they walked out of the palace. Chapter 33-42. Right, Jade Dome Sect's young master, it's best that you bring him along and take care of him personally. As for the two people in the dungeon, I'll settle them. East Wave Monarch was a little dazed. He hadn't finished digesting the meaning of Yi Qing Luo's words. Why did she suddenly mention the successor of Jade Dome Sect? And the two people in the dungeon, could it be that something had happened to the two people in the dungeon? East Wave Monarch was an intelligent man. No matter how many questions he had, he wouldn't voice them out now. He kept replying to Yi Qing Luo's instructions. Then he dismissed those powerhouses' cultivators. He rushed to the palace of the successor of the Jade Dome Sect. In the dungeon, when Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian appeared together, it caused a huge commotion. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand to stop the guards' enthusiasm. The two of them walked quickly into the dungeon and walked towards Hao Nanren's cell door. The guards opened the chains attentively. If Overlord and Imperial Madam want to interrogate the prisoner, just let us bring him over. Why did you come over personally? Yi Qing Luo didn't say a word as she walked straight into the dungeon. Her gaze fell onto the corner. A man dressed in a prisoner's uniform curled up on the ground, as though he was in deep sleep. The guard said attentively, Imperial Madam, don't worry. Jade Dome Sect's sect master fell here after a bout of madness and hasn't moved at all. Hasn't moved? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she walked towards the person in the corner and stepped on him. The person in the corner still didn't move at all. The guard heard the heaviness in Yiqing Luo's tone and his heart trembled. The two guards swiftly walked forward as they squatted down and pried open the person in the corner. When her messy and dirty hair was lifted, she looked at him, revealing Hao Nanren's plump face. The guards heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, he was still around. They hurriedly smiled at Yiqing Luo and were about to speak. But when the young lady saw Hao Nanren's face, her expression turned even gloomier. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be filled with raging waves. Imperial, madam, is something wrong? The guard was shocked by this powerful aura as he felt a chill down his spine. Yiqing Luo kicked her feet as her round body turned, looked carefully. The guards suppressed their fear and stared at Hao Nanren carefully. One of the guards suddenly turned pale. He's dead. Right, dead. The rotund man lying on the ground was no longer breathing. The guard was stunned as he raised his head in puzzlement and looked at Yiqing Luo. He hoped that Yiqing Luo could give him an answer. Why did he suddenly? The sect master of the Jade Dome sect was dead. They had been guarding the entrance of the dungeon. How did the sect master of the Jade Dome sect die? Madam, I really don't know what's going on. The guards were so shocked that they fell to their knees. Yiqing Luo shifted her feet away from that corpse. She looked at Dmo Xian and curled her lips slightly. If we rush over now, will we be able to catch up to the most exciting part? Yes. Dmo Xian gazed deeply into her eyes. Yiqing Luo held onto Dmo Xian's arm and turned to look at the guards kneeling on the ground. You don't have to blame yourselves, this person is not Hao Nanren. Not sect leader Hao? The guards were stunned and stared at the corpse on the ground. This face, this figure, no matter how they looked, it looked like Hao Nanren. In this world, was there anyone who had the same figure as Hao Nanren? Chapter 33-43. Before he could finish, Yiqing Luo interrupted. No need, Xian and I will settle it. Saying that, she and Dmo Xian walked out of the dungeon. Hao Nanren wouldn't die. Neither she nor the Dark Shadow Palace would let Hao Nanren die. He's dead. As the sect master of one of the 4 great sects in the Nirvana realm, it would definitely attract the attention of the Heavenly Tao. Right now, the Nirvana realm was being targeted by the corpse puppets and the Dark Palace. The Heavenly Tao was aware of the current situation in the Nirvana realm. He would definitely intervene in this matter. How could the Palace of Darkness allow such a thing to happen? And the reason why she couldn't let Hao Nanren die, it was because if Hao Nanren died because of her, no matter what the reason was, the death of the sect master would be blamed on her. At that time, a lot of troublesome things would come one after another. In any case, they had been fighting in the Nirvana realm for such a long time. There was no response from the upper realm and the heavenly axiom. Rather than relying on the Heavenly Tao, it was better to rely on oneself. Therefore, she did something to Hao Nanren's body very quickly. It was also commonly known as recycling. While the East Billow Sovereign was imprisoning Hao Nanren in the dungeon, based on his experience fighting against the Palace of Darkness for such a long time, Yiqing Luo had long guessed that over at secluded Darkness Palace's side, they would definitely repeat the same old trick, starting from the enemies around her. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The Dark Ghost Palace made use of this to their advantage, so Yiqing Luo might as well beat him at his own game. The Palace of Darkness wanted to use Hao Nanren's hatred to distract them and attract everyone's attention. Then, she would use Hao Nanren as bait to lure out the people behind the Palace of Darkness. Although Yiqing Luo wasn't sure, the person who came to help Hao Nanren would be the person behind the scenes of the Dark Palace. But one thing was certain. This person definitely had an important position in the Dark Nether Palace. As long as he followed this clue and caught the person behind the scenes of the Dark Palace, he would be able to do so. All the future that the gloomy palace had imagined would be for naught. She had sealed most of Hao Nanren's meridians with needles. The current Hao Nanren probably couldn't even defeat a low-level profound practitioner. In addition, in Hao Nanren's body, she placed a goo worm that Miaoyi had given her. According to the Mother Goo's reaction, Yi Qing Luo was able to differentiate Hao Nanren's position very quickly. Everything was indeed as Yi Qing Luo had planned. Following the Mother Goo's response, Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian quickly arrived at a place outside of East Continent's borders. This was a huge palace built of green bricks that seemed to have existed for a very long time. An extremely dense yin qi floated above the palace. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. This place. Why does it look so strange? Why don't I remember there being such a palace at the border of the East Wave continent? In the past, there really wasn't. Dmo Xian caressed her fine black hair. There was none in the past, but now there was? Who could build such a palace in such a short period of time? Moreover, this palace looked extremely old. How could he not see that it was a newly built palace? Hao Nanren is in the palace. Could it be that this palace is an illusion created by the Palace of Darkness? Yi Qing Luo asked shamelessly. If it was really an illusion of the Dark Palace, then it would be a little tricky. An illusion of the palace had the owner's consciousness. If she and Dmo Xian were to get so close to each other. Chapter 33-44. This would also expose their tracks. It's indeed an illusionary palace. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's burning gaze as his thin lips curled into a smile. Does Lil Luo want to go in? Yi Qing Luo held his palm as she smiled. Ah, Xian can bring me in, right? Dmo Xian would ask in this way. He must have thought of a way to enter the palace without getting hurt. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as his deep pupils gazed deeply at his wrist, at that fair and tender little hand. If Lil Luo wants to go in, I can bring you in. Yi Qing Luo's smile had yet to widen. However, the man suddenly held her hand. His fingers tightened as his arm exerted strength. Her body was brought into Dmo Xian's arms. The scorching temperature infected Yi Qing Luo. The man's husky magnetic voice was heard beside her ear. But, Lil Luo what are you going to use to bribe me to bring you in? You. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks turned hot as she widened her eyes and stared at Dmo Xian. But the moment she raised her head, she met with Dmo Xian's deep and watery peach blossom eyes. That brilliant and colorful light. It was so bright that it made her heart tighten uncontrollably as it palpitated faster. This man. He really didn't let go of any chance to flirt with her. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips rose as her long and narrow eyes curled into a watery arc. She laughed softly as she cooperated with him and said what he wanted to hear. I'll use myself to bribe you, how about that? Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with smiles as his palm held the back of the young lady's head, as he suddenly bent down and kissed her lips. It was just a very light kiss before he left her lip. Let's collect the interest first. He laughed lightly as he released the back of her head and held her little hand in his large palm. Let's go. Yi Qing Luo regained her senses from the beauty. She actually stood in the palace. What the heck? Wasn't she just standing outside the palace? Why did she come in? Could it be? Earlier when Dmo Xian was kissing her, brought her into the palace? Did he need to be so mysterious? Looking at the young lady's shocked face and staring at him with a helpless look. The expression on Dmo Xian's face turned warmer. The depths of his eyes were also tainted with a bit of doting and tenderness. Let's go find Hao Nanren. To be able to make such a big scene in the palace, I think. That person must be the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian's arm and spread out the mother beast in her hands, following the mother beast's reaction, searching for Hao Nanren's direction. With the guidance of the mother beast, Yi Qing Luo quickly came to the room which Hao Nanren was in. However, she and Dmo Xian had just stepped into the room. Behind him, a sinister laugh sounded. TSK? As expected, you've come. That cold voice was accompanied by a creepy laughter. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, Her expression changed slightly as she swiftly hugged Diamo Xian's arm and turned around. But behind her, other than Hao Nanren, who was sitting on a wooden chair, there was no one else. The moment he saw Yiqing Luo, Hao Nanren was also surprised. He slammed the table and stood up. You bitch! His eyes were scarlet red as he clenched his teeth, looking as though he was about to rush up and swallow Yiqing Luo alive. Yiqing Luo's vision looked around vigilantly as she squinted her eyes. Her perceptive ability couldn't detect the aura which was emitting that sneer. Chapter 33:45. Diamo Xian held her hand and squeezed it. This action replaced his reply. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Diamo Xian's meaning was, there was indeed a fourth person other than Hao Nanren. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly constricted. She had already advanced to Sky Profound 4th grade. She couldn't sense the presence of the fourth person. It showed how powerful that person was. You slut! How did you know that I'm here? Hao Nanren bellowed in exasperation. And what on earth did you do to me? Why is it that I have no way to utilize the profound energy in my profound jade heart? Are you the one who did it? Hao Nanren howled hysterically. It didn't even attract Diamo Xian and Yiqing Luo's gazes onto him. This made Hao Nanren feel that Yiqing Luo totally didn't put him in her eyes. In fact, Yiqing Luo indeed didn't put him in her eyes. Yiqing Luo's thoughts were all on that powerful and mysterious person who couldn't be seen. Slut! In this place, I'm not afraid of you at all. Hao Nanren was flustered as he rolled up his sleeves and pounced towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He hadn't finished his furious howl. Diamo Xian raised his hand slightly. A burst of majestic, profound energy sent Hao Nanren flying out. Yiqing Luo half squinted her eyes as she slightly raised her head, as her lips curled into a faint cold smile. Since we will enter the palace, it is within your expectations. Now that this is your territory, do you still not dare to show your true face? She intentionally suppressed her voice to be extremely calm. Her words were filled with provocation towards that mysterious and powerful person. When Diamo Xian indicated that there was indeed a fourth person in this room, Yiqing Luo knew that she and Diamo Xian had fallen into a trap. That person in the dark had long known that they would come to the palace. Or rather, just as she intended to make use of Hao Nanren to beat him at his own game, to use him as bait to attract the mastermind of Secluded Palace. The person in the dark also beat them at their own game, using Hao Nanren as the bait to lure them. Whereas she and Diamo Xian had changed from the hunter to the prey. That person lured her and Diamo Xian into this palace. Definitely. He already had a way to deal with her and Diamo Xian. The current situation. It was unrealistic for them to leave this palace. He might as well take the initiative to attack. First, he had to figure out who this mysterious and powerful person was. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, Hao Nanren's angry face froze. Little bitch, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that it was within expectations that you would find me? Finally, Yiqing Luo shifted her gaze onto Hao Nanren. The smile in her eyes was tinged with sympathy and pity. You actually don't know? But that's true. With the intelligence of the Jade Dome sect leader, even if he was sold, he would still happily count the money for the other party. What did you say? Hao Nanren's expression darkened. Isn't that simple? You are nothing more than bait that he used to lure me out. Yiqing Luo's lips twitched in ridicule. Don't tell me you really think that Secluded Palace's people will save a useless trash like you? Little bitch. Don't even think of instigating this sect leader. Hao Nanren clenched his fists tightly. Ha 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 ha. That sinister laughter rang once again. Chapter 33:46. That person was extremely tall and dressed in a black robe. It was the standard equipment of the mysterious person. With his face covered, it was impossible to see the person's face clearly. Especially, the dense black aura that shrouded his entire body was like a spider web, densely spreading out like a huge bloody mouth, causing one's scalp to go numb and fear to rise in their hearts. What shocked Yiqing Luo the most was, even if this person appeared in front of her, she still couldn't sense the aura of the person in front of her. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed slightly, as her slender fair fingers subconsciously held Dmo Xian's hand tightly. The man stretched out his arm and pulled her into his embrace. The warm scent of sandalwood permeated her entire body. Dmo Xian gently circled the young lady's petite body, as if the other party had scared the person in his heart. His pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes instantly shot out coldness, like frost cutting through bones. He looked at that person, Palace Master. Of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows? The man chuckled. His cold voice, which had been deliberately altered, sounded a little creepy. Your Majesty, I trust you have been well since we last met. This was also tacitly agreeing to Dmo Xian's question. Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace? As expected, the Palace Master of the secluded palace had come personally? Yiqing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes as she sized that person up. You. What's your motive for luring us to the palace that you've created? Weren't you the one who used this trash as bait to lure this empress into taking the bait? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace chuckled. Her sharp voice was strangely hoarse. As you wish, I have appeared in front of you. Why don't you feel happy? Hao Nanren, who was labeled as trash, was speechless. Even now, he still did not know what exactly had happened. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. If everything went according to her plan, she would be the hunter, using Hao Nanren as the bait to lure out the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. Of course she was happy. But now, the situation was obviously different. She fell into someone's trap and became the other party's prey. Could she be happy? Who knew what kind of trap was laid in this palace, waiting for her and Dmo Xian to jump into the pit? The other party obviously knew that Dmo Xian was by her side. Furthermore, she had used Hao Nanren as bait and Dmo Xian would definitely be by her side. He even dared to play such a trick. Obviously, he had no fear towards Dmo Xian. Towards the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, Yiqing Luo was more or less clear about him. According to Jun Qingwu and Dmo Xian's previous investigations, the person behind the gloomy palace must be someone with an extremely high status in the upper realm. And Dmo Xian was also from the upper realm. The Palace Lord of Netherworld Palace wasn't afraid of Dmo Xian's words. Either that, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace already had a surefire plan to deal with Dmo Xian. Or, the Palace Lord of the Netherworld Palace and Dmo Xian's status were on par. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of facing him. This thought made Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly dimmed. Little Luo. The man beside her gently called her name. His deep and mellow voice was like a clear spring, instantly calming her heart. Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at him. Mo Yao's peach blossom eyes glowed faintly. I'm here, don't worry. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up as she gave a sweet smile. Amen, I believe you. With Ah Xian by her side, all her uneasiness, under his gentleness and calming presence, disappeared. She hugged the man's firm waist tightly. Chapter 33-47. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as her vision swiftly followed the direction of that aura. Coincidentally, it met with the Palace Lord's eyes. That's right. It was his eyes. That black cloak was shrouded in, making one unable to see his real eyes. It was like a black whirlpool, constantly surging violently. His sharp gaze was burning. That gaze was indeed scorching. What was going on? Why did the Palace Lord reveal such a gaze to her? Just like, what evil deeds had she done to let him down? But the Palace Lord didn't give her a chance to think deeply. The Palace Lord's eyes were once again shrouded in the cloak. Miss. The palace mistress of Ethereal Palace deliberated over Yi Qing Luo's form of address, as she gave a low chuckle. I heard that Miss Yi is exceptionally intelligent. This palace would like to hear. Miss Yi, what is this palace's motive? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. The palace lord continued to smile. If you guessed correctly, I will let you leave. How about that? The Lord of Abyss Palace's vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. This gaze made Yi Qing Luo feel uncomfortable all over. This palace lord. What on earth did he want to do? Why? Did she feel that his gaze had a strange feeling, like familiarity, like resentment, or like... He was extremely displeased with her actions. All sorts of complicated emotions made Yi Qing Luo slightly puzzled. Why did she feel that the palace lord seemed to know her? No. Impossible. If she knew this kind of person, so powerful that he was standing in front of her. If she couldn't sense such a powerful figure. It was impossible that she didn't know him. Her waist was suddenly held by a strong and powerful arm. The man pulled her behind him. His tall and straight body blocked in front of her, and also blocked the palace lord's vision. Diamo Xian's dark peach blossom eyes seemed to flash with biting cold as he looked coldly at the palace lord. If I want to bring my wife away, do you think you can stop me? Their gazes collided. The surrounding air seemed to have condensed. Yi Qing Luo could even feel that in the air there was a shapeless qi wave, constantly surging, revealing a strong murderous aura. Lord Di Zun is really confident in himself. The palace master of the secluded palace sneered and suddenly raised his right arm. Yi Qing Luo's expression changed. Ah Xian. Diamo Xian's arms tightened and a transparent barrier blocked in front of the both of them. In the surroundings, the luxurious palace slowly turned into a black aura, gradually distorting and dissipating. Gradually, it turned into an abyss that resembled hell. The black aura was twisting bit by bit. It formed another scene. Weeds grew everywhere, and the air was filled with the smell of plants that had been corroded, giving off a gloomy and horrifying feeling. At this moment, a powerful airwave turned into a hurricane and collided with Diamo Xian's barrier. Yi Qing Luo was in Protector Emo Xian's arms as she opened her eyes and surveyed the surroundings. It was a desolate graveyard. It was impossible to tell how old this tomb was. The oppressive atmosphere made it difficult for people to breathe. Hao Nanren, who was sitting on the chair, saw this scene and was so scared that his legs turned into jelly. Where is this? Didn't you say that you will help me take revenge? Why? Hao Nanren was listening to the conversation between Yi Qing Luo and the palace lord of the secluded palace. He more or less understood some of the words.